you feel that music coming in? Did that just get the heart pumping? What a start. I am the people's host, as voted by you. I am back with popular demand. Back at the mic, Nick Stoll. I'm here in your hour of need, Australian football fans. It was a dark, dark week. And, we all just have to face that. We're going to go through the stages of grief. There's anger, there's bargaining, there's sadness. Help me out here, Josh and Ante, because I know it finishes with acceptance, but I just don't. There's one in the middle there.
Wow, what a start to the podcast, guys.
Look, we're going to get into everything. We're going to get into the Socceroos Japan. We're going to get into the W League Grand Final. We're going to talk about the COVID-ravaged box office Jets beating Sydney FC. Not that we are biased. We call it as we see it. We're going to talk all the other A-League games that, let's be honest, not too much to talk to, so we'll try and get through that quick. And we're even going to talk, what is this? A totally unbiased, scientific, analytical look at what is a better sport, AFL or football. Because AFL really were pumping its own tires a bit this week, and maybe it's time we just looked into the facts of that. Shout out our first comment of the evening. Wow, what a game. And I'm glad that someone has commented already. You can comment on YouTube, you can comment on Facebook, you can comment on Twitter. Please get in your comments, because this is the Australian football people's show, provided we like you as people. Because there's some people in Australian football, obviously, no one can like. They're just unlikable people.
Quote, unquote, football people. This is like...
So much to get into. But, obviously we're going to finish this show, as we always do, under an hour. So let's get straight into it. Socceroos 0, Japan 2, our first loss home soil, World Cup qualifying in 41 years. Josh, were you... So when it happened, I was kind of predicting it, as, we may have seen in the group chat when the lineups come out. I was like, I think this is exactly what's going to happen. And then it did, and I was fuming. I was still absolutely raging. What was your emotional reaction? I just want to talk emotions first. What was your emotional reaction?
My emotional reaction. When you're right about something, but you don't want to be. That was my feeling afterwards. It's like, this was always going to happen, but it still really hurt. I was actually just very sad. I was very stung by it, because, I was really in the back of my mind, even if I, have the victory lap about Graham Arnold, in the bag, if it goes poorly, I still, when I look down inside myself, really deeply want the Socceroos to go to the World Cup, because
100%.
I care about this team for whatever deranged reason. And
because over the years, they've given us so much happiness.
It shouldn't be deranged. Sorry, but...
Ante, before I go to you, I just want to say we've got some comments already coming in. Ivan Stragan via YouTube. First up, round of applause to Ante and his article. Simply amazing. Don't know what article he is referring to there. Maybe you need to be more specific. Ante's written a lot of crap over the years, so if you could really narrow down to... I think he might be talking about the one at ESPN. Go check it out if you haven't. And then another comment coming in from Toros. Toros says... Toros means, bull in Spain, but feel sorry for Ante being stuck between two wannabe presenters. Feel sorry for him. Feel jealous of him, Toros. Clearly, he's stuck between the best host, Josh, and the people's host, me. And actually, feel sorry for us who have to put up with Ante. So, Ante, you tend to have vast emotional reactions to Australian football. Tell us, what was your emotion on Thursday evening?
All right, so you kind of had a window into my thoughts on, we caught up on Thursday. We did this as is customary when you go to the Shadow Realm. You go and see the people's host.
I'm the fixer in Sydney. When these Melbourne journalists come in, I'm like, all right, this is where you got to go.
Nick Stoll, friend of ours,
puppet master.
Yeah, look, I can keep you out of trouble only for so long, man. Eventually you're gonna have to say Sydney FC is doing really well. No.
But look, I'll say this. I was in the press box with one unnamed journalist, and he saw my reaction when Metcalf and Stensness were setting up as two defensive midfielders. And from there, I just I was like, for fuck's sake, that's essentially what I said. For fuck's sake, like
5 minutes into the podcast and we have our first swear. Well done, whoever predicted that. In the comments next week, I want you to put what minute of the podcast you think is going to be our first swear, our first wrestling reference, our first where I pump myself up and compare myself to, Giannis Varoufakis or someone on that level. But they're 5 minutes in. But Ante, because you're right. Look, to me, and I said it on the night, it was insane to start two players who tactically didn't fit together. We're talking about Census and Metcalf here, who had no experience at this level. No experience at this level.
Okay, that's fair.
In our biggest game since the Asian Cup, or at least since the World Cup.
Look, because with Stenson and Metcalf, it didn't necessarily mean that they were going to start or play 4-4-2. Given the body of evidence with Connor Metcalf as written today, and shameless plug, but Connor Metcalf is primarily used as an advanced midfielder that makes runs into the penalty area and occupies a defensive line. And so I saw that lineup and thought, okay, it can be similar to how Jackson Irvine was used against Vietnam, or initially against Oman. Well, both games initially, when you think about it. But it was that opening minute, and it was like all the air went out of the room. Like, for me, it was just my very thought in that moment was like, fuck, he really can't do this with the players he has in the situation and the gravity of the situation. Given Australia has to win, he's going to play this way. And it's like, Australia were fortunate given the complexion, and and it was something else I wrote about today. Once the initial wave of energy dissipated, Australia were lost. We were really, really lost and disjointed, and as a direct result of how Graham Arnold misused his players. And this is a running theme over the course of the World Cup qualification phase. This was a running theme even during the Asian Cup in 2019. Yeah. And speaking of victory laps, I called that too. But I mean, I just couldn't fathom that in that situation, he would be that negligent and that inflexible. But at the same time, it's like this perfect reflection of Australian coaching, because however much it says of Graham Arnold, it says just as much about Australian coaching.
So just kind of on a technical thing, would you have preferred, and do you think it would have been better? Would we have had more success? Stensis in the kind of the sixth, the defensive midfielder role, if you will, the pivot, ahead of him, Hrustic and Metcalf, and then Mobile wide, Boyle wide, Duke up top. Like, what adjustments would you have made from the start?
I mean, whether it has this transformative impact on the game over the course of 90 minutes, is uncertain, but at least Australia would have been able to build some kind of tangible and sustainable threat with either Metcalf used properly or with genre in midfield. I think that's a given, especially with Metcalf on Morita's side. And at the same time, it wasn't just what the 4-4, what Arnold's system and formation did for us with the ball. I'm like, wow. It's what it was doing for us defensively and the ground coverage that we had, that we weren't able to cover the pitch evenly, essentially. Yeah. And although it wasn't preferential, our coverage of Wataru Endo, who, as that game slowed down, he became more and more influential over the course of that game. And that transfer of Minamino is where he hits the bar with that header in it was like 32nd minute. Yeah. That was very distinct, because it was the first time Japan actually played through Endo, despite the positions that he was actually getting into, and Australia not really covering him.
Well, I think just on this, I think it's like there was a frustration as well, because I don't think Japan were great first 30 minutes as well. There was this wasn't like, oh, we've been totally destroyed by a team that is so superior to us. There was, I think, an opportunity there for a result. Just a couple more comments coming in. Stephen Gunavus, who was at the game, Sydney Brain Alert. I'll just say, Stephen, you talked a lot of shit about my city this week. And it's one of those things like my family, right? I'll talk as much shit as I want about the city all the time. But if you come here from another city, start going blah, 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 I don't really rate it, to be honest. Another comment coming in. Paul Turner, boys, is there truth to the rumor that there is a rift in the squad, especially a split playing group, especially between the technically strong players and some of the others? Ante, you were at the game. Did you hear anything like this? Personally, I haven't heard anything like this, but it's also not uncommon in football teams, especially ones that are under pressure like the Socceroos.
Okay, so do I give a TNC exclusive?
I think you do. I think
once you say that, you got to.
Yeah. Oh, bro! Imagine if you blue balled us with. I'm not going to do it now.
No, I'm not going to do it. If I speak, I'm in trouble, man. No. Look, I heard enough before the Japan game. I'll say that
there was a rift.
Not a rift, but there were
internal issues.
There were let's say fractious elements.
Got you. Ivan Stragan is trying to play detective, narrowing down the possible Sydney journals. They wrote for the Sydney papers. It was probably either Bossy or Ricky. Look, it cannot confirm or deny. It might have been me as well. Sydney-based journalist.
Hey,
might have been me.
He's the fixer.
Might have done the double bluff.
He's the fixer.
Josh,
I wanted to say, Ante, you were talking about the use of Metcalf in that game being counter to his skill set, but that's the perfect summation of Graham Arnold. He's incapable of introspection and self-reflection. He's incapable of it. His entire mentality, and I know it's a meme, I know it is, but it's actually not, because you come back to Bradley C. Stubbs and expect to win, done, and that's the entire bunker mentality of this guy, that if you just block out all the outside noise and you focus on what you do and you believe in it hard enough and you hold on to it,
that was
I will say,
can't let go of the one core idea. He's incapable of reflection. And, there was a little tweak when we played Vietnam. There was a little tweak when we played Oman. And we conceded a couple of goals against Oman, and then he got scared and he abandoned it.
Those tweaks even then, and this is what I said after the Oman game, they were essentially dips of toes into the water. We never really were committed to changing. And so it's not really surprising that we've gone back to type in such a high stakes game. What really struck me about Thursday night was the presser afterwards, speaking of Arnold and his, proverbial bearing of the head in the sand because he's so singular or narrow-minded in terms of his approach. It was like, I asked about Metcalf. And I was, as he's answering the question, I'm like, you are giving this to me on a plate, man. Like, how do you
when he tried to tell you that Denny Jonro was a number 10?
It's a 10. Like Denny Jonro is a 10. Conor Metcalf,
10, so you can't play him in the double pivot.
Like, how do you have such an inaccurate? And that was like why I kind of went into why I did for today's article. It's like, how do you have such an inaccurate interpretation or evaluation of the footballers you select? It's because you only view them within the prism of your system and not as a means of like what they actually do on the pitch. It's crazy. I was that unnamed journalist could probably confirm as well, but I was just flabbergasted as to the sheer inaccuracy of his commentary after the game.
I also have a TNC exclusive. That unnamed journalist was Lee Sales. 7:30. She wants to get into Australian football. Don't know why. It's not exactly on the rise right now. Stephen Gunavus got in touch again. He says, all seriousness though, Graham Arnold was out of his depth at the Asian Cup 2019 and never worked it out after.
Yes, but you know what? And this is I remain consistent now as I did after the Asian Cup. FA or FFA committed significantly towards Graham Arnold, and they should see this through.
Yeah, and I would say as well, they are as complicit, I think, in this. And
absolutely.
I didn't really like the fact, a little bit of media watch, the fact that on the eve of the game, hours before, there was a story that was essentially leaked to Vince Rugari, who I'm, obviously a big fan of Vince, work with him with Stand Sport FC. I think he's a great journalist. But there was a story leaked to him, which basically said they're going to bring in a football overlord. And there was, talk of Wenger and Bielsa and blah, blah, on the eve of a must-win game, one of our most important games, which was essentially, in my reading of it, was that they're basically saying, look, we know we're not going to win, obviously. And here's something so you guys don't say we're not doing anything.
Softening the ground.
Softening the ground. I didn't like that.
Compare that to the leak. Compare that to the leak of Moy being dropped.
Yeah. And also, I will also compare that to after the game, there was a lot of leaks of, we don't know if, we can really, there's no support given to Arnie at all. So I don't know. To me, it's like either make a decision or stop undermining this guy.
I think it's quite clear that they're washing their hands of Graham Arnold.
Absolutely.
And I think there's enough to suggest that Sunday or the weekend before with the whole COVID breach, it gives them ammunition, and it gives them scope to act in such a disloyal way. Because you know what, like I know he was like the main character on Soccer Twitter today, and he's essentially a mouthpiece for Graham Arnold. But
Robbie Slater,
what in Robbie Slater's article today was actually inaccurate or wrong in terms of Football Australia's treatment of Graham Arnold?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, obviously, it's coming from a very biased Robbie Slater point of view, and look, I as I said in the chat earlier, it's. I like Robbie Slater writing about Graham Arnold because you get what Graham Arnold's thoughts are. Yeah, we get an unfiltered version of what Graham Arnold's thoughts are. I mean, I'm presuming allegedly, blah, blah, blah. Let's go to some more comments. Edmund Al Jung, and apologies if I mispronounce anyone's names. If both our national team coaches remain in charge after all these debacles, what does it say about our game's leadership? Good question, because Tony G had similar issues, although Tony G, speaks better in press conferences, but he doesn't get really any better results. Paul Turner says, speaking of the commentary, the post-match discourse was the final nail in the coffin. It's time that our real football journalists drop the meme culture and use your voices for good. Well, I mean, Paul, what do you think this podcast is, mate? It's 2 hours of using our voices for good. And we're trying our best here.
And like 25 minutes of meme culture.
Yeah, but come on, you need a bit of sugar to make the medicine go down. Look, I guess the thing now is to reflect. Let's talk about what do you guys think should happen going forward. We've got the game against Saudi Arabia, I believe, on Wednesday morning. Oh, and I just want to actually give another quick shout out to someone else who commented. They commented via... I'm having some technical difficulties. Ben Smith basically commented via Twitter, and he said...
Ben Smith.
And by the way, shout out to Ben Smith. Absolutely smashed it last week. Such a great guy, and we'll get him on definitely again soon. Fitting to see Joey start this podcast with a personal tribute to his hero, Danny Johnroe, languishing on the sidelines when his services are needed in the thick of the action. Ben, his services are not needed. They are tolerated, all right? They are tolerated. We don't need him. I think we're going great.
Look, Joey's a number 10, and we can't really fit him in the system. Yeah. So, look, it is what it is. Like, he's doing very well. He's doing very well in the press box. He's got a lot of minutes there. You
guys are providing me the defensive presence I need. So, I need to create.
Especially with Ante drifting inside all the time, we need a more stable presence. We need the double pivot. The two, what was it? The two wannabe presenters. Exactly. Providing a bit of stability.
Look, I'll say to me, this is actually like Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets prime. The three. We don't need anyone else.
I'm clearly yesterday, man.
Anna Harrington, Pokuah Frimpong, they're all going to come later. But honestly,
Harry's on there. I'm excited about Harry being on this podcast.
Yes, it's not just going to be the three of us for the entire night. That's important to note.
So if you are like Toros and you don't like 2 out of 3 of us, don't worry. We will become less of a percentage as the night goes on. Josh, thoughts on what should happen in the kind of immediate future in regards to the Saudi Arabia game, in terms of experimentation lineup? Who do you bring in? Do you even replace the coach already then? Do you replace the coach before a potential a guaranteed playoff against the third place Asian team, which will be UAE or Iraq, or I think even potentially Lebanon, but I'll take a miracle. So let's just say UAE or Iraq. And then, knock on wood, hopefully we get through that game and then we face the fifth team in South America, which I believe will be Peru, Colombia, or Chile.
Peru or
Josh,
Colombia, most likely.
Thoughts on what we do going forward?
Well, honestly, I think we may as well roll the dice. Obviously, it's impractical to change anything before the Saudi Arabia game, but it looks as if, as we said earlier, Football Australia are beginning to wash their hands of Graham Arnold, so I think he could be gone sooner rather than later. Who they bring in as a result of that, I mean, I can't see a Gus Hiddink 2.0 happening again. When it came down to it back then, we had the money to bring in somebody like that to pinch hit for us in a crucial playoff scenario. But and I would do the same thing again. I would go foreign because I don't see a local coach of sufficient quality and a sufficient point of difference to actually move the needle, so to speak, in time for these playoff games. I just don't see it. So, I would go foreign, some sort of gun for hire, and roll the dice because the commercial benefits that come with qualifying for a World Cup versus missing out on it, as well as the attention deficit that our game suffers if we're not there. And I think that it is worth it to just try anything in these playoff games. But as for a longer term solution, I think that's something for a technical director to look at. But talking about the leadership of our game, and I guess I just see a pervasive culture of. I'm going to sound like Nigel Pearson here, but I see a lot of ostriches sticking their heads in the sand, and I see this almost. It's almost like a cult-like inside inner circle that seems to perceive any criticism from the outside as a personal attack, and that troubles me. That really troubles me, and this extends not only to the Socceroos stuff and the coverage we've seen, and but also to the Matildas. The reaction of those on the inside seems to suggest that they don't take any of this on board. They see this as agendas being waged against them until it becomes suddenly untenable from a PR perspective. Until it reaches a critical mass, as it has with Graham Arnold this week, and then they will look to save their own skins, and that troubles me. And I do wonder whether those in charge of this have the best interests of the game at heart, or the best interests of their CVs.
A story as old as time. Ante, just before we get to your thoughts on the future, we got lots of comments coming in, and I really do appreciate it. I want to get to everyone. Jesse Jenkinson. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? People listening in all around the world, I can tell people are tuning in. That's it. People tuning in New York City, Tokyo, Barcelona, probably some Socceroos players in Riyadh being like, yeah, man, it was not my fault. Jesse Jenkinson asks, anyone finding any reasons why Arnold does not have any faith in Mclaren as he barely plays under Arnold's tenure? We'll get into that in a second. We also got some comments earlier in the show from Paul Turner. Got a bit of some creepy comments coming in from Paul Turner. Got to be honest with you. I see some knee action from Ante. Is he where? And then it just stops.
Just got shorts on, man.
Is he wearing black socks? Honestly, Paul, we all appreciate all comments, but that's getting a little.
You could probably see from the shadow there, the toes and the full skull deck.
Don't give that away for free, I'd say.
Yeah, but
keep that for the Patreon subscribers down the line.
Paul Turner has redeemed himself because he says 100% nailed it, Josh. Look, we're like anyone. If you praise us, we'll repeat that praise in a public forum. Ante, what do you think should happen in the future? And Toros, who's a big fan of yours, he's asking, is it worth considering Alan Stajic for the role?
No.
There you have it.
Quite simple. No.
How good a coach is Alan Stajic, really? Or how different is he?
Josh coming in hot.
I mean, there were so many things he did as a Matildas coach that just annoyed the shit out of
me.
He
did, you know what, he's
a bit of a weekend, if you can't tell, ladies and gentlemen.
He's a bit of a, his tenure at Central Coast was interesting. Like, he isn't necessarily a bad coach. He just he just has ants in his pants with respect to adjustment and tinkering and like trying to find that's just what it is.
Ants is a great description.
Like, he's got ants in his pants.
Ante,
what do you think
Claudio Ranieri of Australian football? Tinker Man.
Dilly ding, dilly dong. We're going to the World Cup. One of my nations is going to the World Cup.
Honestly, I want to revise my comment on Alan Stajic, actually. He raised the Matildas to a certain level, and then I think they hit a ceiling of, I think they became a much fitter side under him. I think they pressed higher. They were more disciplined tactically. But he started putting players out of position.
Let's not get into a huge revision.
He started getting in his own way.
Succinctly, I'll say the Matildas burnt out under him, and that's why it ended the way it did.
And Football Australia has permanently burnt that bridge, so this can never happen again. It doesn't matter. Even if he was the best coach that Australia's ever produced, Football Australia would never hire him again based on what's happened. So it's irrelevant.
And this podcast is going under an hour, so let's get back on focus.
Okay, let's move on.
Ante. Near-term future, long-term future, Socceroos, tell me.
Graham Arnold should see it through because if
the whole way, even the next
whole way. Because you know what? If Football Australia wanted to show that it was actually different and wanted to show that it was actually different to what has come before, they would see this through. Because I guess this was the one question I always had at the start of this qualification phase. What was going to happen between Graham Arnold and Football Australia when the air got thick? Were they going to back him? They clearly haven't. And this is far be it for me to be an apologist for Graham Arnold, but this is... He wasn't ready. He clearly wasn't ready. He never was ready. And I remember there was a line I used when Graham Arnold was hired. He wasn't the best local candidate. He was simply the least bad. And the defining attribute a coach should have outside of an interpersonal quality for international football, considering the truncated time, you have to be flexible. Like, Graham Arnold is the opposite of being flexible. Like, I think this qualification phase has been evidence enough. At the same time, though, given the campaign for Tony Popovic has already started, I just want everyone to have watched tonight's game against Melbourne Victory, or against Western Sydney. We're going to have that against UAE or Iraq or Lebanon, if Tony Popovic is coach. It's not very different to what we already have with Graham Arnold in terms of our qualities in possession against a team that's going to sit off against us.
Yeah, because there has been a lot of clamour for Popovic. Maybe not a lot.
Yeah, because he does well in the A-League. Oh, yeah, he's
a Champions League winner.
He's a Champions League winner, playing the ugliest fucking football possible against.
By the way,
speaking of revisionism,
oh my God, did we get lucky? And I say we, as in the Australian team, in the final, an absolute robbery from the referee. I mean, I was happy about it, but it was a robbery.
The reality is, in the same way that the dynamics of qualification for Australia and Asia are incompatible to Arnold, they just as much apply to Tony Popovic, or really any coach in the A-League outside of the fucking box office Jets. At the end of the day, though, just let Arnold see it through, and because I know,
but we're never going to qualify if you leave him in charge. We probably rolling the dice.
We probably won't. But the thing is, I don't fully subscribe to this theory, but Australian football needs some bloodletting. We need to realise the consequences of our actions over the past 15 to 20 years in terms of development. This would be the ultimate, he can't keep getting away with this shit with Australian football if they were to qualify for Qatar. But my cynicism, eventually leads me to the likelihood that nothing will change, especially with the 48-team World Cup coming in soon. What changes here?
Yeah. So, look, interesting about you saying let Arnie see it through. One name that was bandied about that Stephen Gunavus has brought up. Everyone wants Arnold out and begging for an even bigger football terrorist like asking for Queiroz. So anyone who missed it,
fuck me dead. Like, oh, you know what? Fuck this. Let's get into media watch.
Hold on.
All right.
Just for people who missed it, potentially, Andy Harper said after the game on Channel 10 that you should look at bringing in someone like Queiroz. And then Simon Hill asked short term or long term, obviously just saying like basically just for these, potential playoff games. And then Andy Harper said, well, there's no such thing as short term anymore. So I actually, look, to me, I know Stevens called him a terrorist, and I'll be honest, I watched Egypt.
What was Bert Van Marwijk if not short term?
Absolutely.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
But I will say, I would back Queiroz to get us a result in two one-off playoff games. Then I'd get back Arnold. If that's what we're talking about here. Queiroz, his teams are some of the worst teams I've ever seen in my life. Egypt in that African Cup of Nations final, horrific. That Iran team for many, many years, horrific. But you look
at how differently Skocic has approached Iran. They can play. They're like, he's getting the most out of Iran, and like Queiroz, all right, let's get into this. This is not a media watch thing, but this is coming back to something that Josh said. In Australian football and in Australian football leadership, there is a prevailing atmosphere or sense of suspect ball knowledge leading to suspect football decisions. And suspect football decisions that are driven by an inability to actually understand what is going on. And that was something that was very pervasive for me on Thursday. It's insane just how much people who have spent their whole lives watching this fucking sport don't understand a fucking thing of what's going on. Pardon my swearing, but this is really, really upsetting because these are the people who have such a great responsibility for leading this country's football. How the fuck can you fail in such a spectacular manner? It boggles the mind.
So speaking of boggling the mind, Joey Lynch, everybody.
Joey Lynch.
Generally, and Joey, it's great to have you on the show. Late, availability is the best ability, but that's all good. Look, I'll hit you with a question early. A question from one of the viewers, the listeners, however you want to phrase it. Jack Pantelios. Do you think the criticism being directed at Johnson and FA should be directed more so at Gallup Lowy? They hired Arnie. They introduced TNC. I think I introduced TNC tonight. But he's talking about the national curriculum, not the show, the actual one. From my POV point of view, they're getting off scot-free because they are OSOM, which I believe means out of sight, out of mind. But it could mean he just doesn't know how to spell awesome, and he just went for awesome. And maybe he's saying that they're great. So, Joey, that's quite
great acronym usage in that question. That's an efficient Twitter character limit being hit.
Well done, Joey. I'll put the thing just up on screen so you can see it again. But let us
tweeted that as well, by the way. It's not
Jesus.
So he really wanted to ask this question. It's great. We love the listener interaction. It's the best.
Joey,
the listeners ask better questions than Stoll does, so
and also, I will say the listeners ask more questions when I'm on because maybe that's the good job of the host, bringing everyone in. So, Joey, before I insult you anymore, give me your thoughts on the Socceroos, please.
Right. Wait, the Socceroos or the question, Mr. Host?
This is my thoughts. My thoughts on the Socceroos is the same as Jack's YouTube comment.
They are not great.
I was initially answering Jack's question, and then he's thrown to me asking for my thoughts on the Socceroos.
Joey, I just know that you tend to go off on tangents. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set you up for your first tangent. Answer Jack's original question about should more be directed at Gallup or Lowy as opposed to Johnson FA, and then answer because you are late. answer your wider thoughts about the Socceroos, please? Because we've been talking for 34 minutes about it, and I'd love to hear. Well, I wouldn't love to hear it, but the people would love to hear your thoughts.
Okay. I absolutely do not think that more of the criticism should be being directed at David Gallop and Lowy. What the hell would that accomplish other than just providing a smokescreen for the people that are currently in charge, the current direction of football? No, Ante. I'm not going to argue. I am not going to argue that said criticism would not be valid. It absolutely would be valid. But what is it going to accomplish?
Fair enough.
Is Gallop going to be hired by Football Australia again anytime soon? No. Is Lowy going to be, take over Australian football anytime soon? Not the least for, what was it, 34 years between his walk out of the NSL and takeover of
it would take another one of his clubs to be pushed out of the NSL.
Yeah, pretty much something like that. So I am not going to argue that such criticisms and such focus would be, valid. If you are writing a book, feel free to go for it. But in the current discourse in which Australian football itself has a tendency to chase shiny objects and become distracted and to go after the latest straw man or boogeyman of the month, I do not feel as though we should be wasting oxygen on two people that have been out of football in Australia for a long time, and there is zero actual purpose to it. The focus moving forward should be figuring out, how do we fix this? Who is still there right now that requires the spotlight? Because the spotlight absolutely needs to be on more than Graham Arnold. Yes, he's the current Socceroos boss, and I'm probably already going over ground that has been covered by you guys before I joined. But there's systemic failures here. There's a lack of proper technical oversight, for example, for Graham Arnold. Who is the technical director at Football Australia that is pulling Graham Arnold aside and saying, Graham, this isn't working. We need to figure something else out. Who is doing that? There is no one there. I just do not feel as though Australian football should be wasting the limited scope for debate it currently possesses on figures that aren't in the game.
Joey, do you think it would be right to blame Football Australia staff? Paul Turner just wanting to know. Nah, Ante, you actually had
Is Paul having a laugh?
Yes. Ante, you had a serious point that you wanted to make in response to Joey.
I guess it's important that we know our history and we know how we got here, because by doing that, we can identify the problems that befall Australian football. Do I believe that we should be dragging Gallop and Lowy through the mud in public discourse at this particular point in time? No, it's not the time or the place for that, and it's not it's like you said, it's not really beneficial. But in terms of actually beginning to make clearer decisions and understand why we should make clearer decisions, we should absolutely be asking this. However, how Johnson and his mandate has conducted business in relation to Arnold over the course of this World Cup qualification phase is at the very least questionable, and it's probably more of a pertinent issue than what has come before or what has come to pass with respect to Graham Arnold's hire. However dubious that was as well, given what was going on at that point in time. I think it's like I said, at the end of the day, I think it's important that we do know how we got here, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that's going to allow us to, go on to a healthier path and a healthier discourse in Australian football.
Can I just make a rare serious point from me that, I cannot, the same arguments, the same debates we've been having for 15, 20 years, as long as I've been following football. And then every now and again, a football historian will put up something from 1980s, I don't know, some soccer magazine, and it'll be the same arguments. And I genuinely cannot fathom going another 5, 10 years having the same arguments, Joey.
What's also the same? Not only are the arguments the same, you actually read those historical articles. A lot of the names are the same.
Yeah. It's.
Look,
I mean, I guess,
like I said,
well,
you talk about know your history. There's plenty of people still in the game that have overseen a lot of calamities in the past and are still hanging around.
Here's, I guess, the big point is
coming in hot, Joseph Lynch.
How do we avoid repeating our history?
All knowledge.
How do we make sure that in 5 years' time, the TNC live in a studio, because it's on TV now, just projecting a little bit, recorded in a bar? No, I don't. How do we make sure that we're not having the same argument, after another qualification cycle? Now, probably in the next qualification cycle, we'll qualify because there are more spots. But
quantitative easing in football. Look, I think at the end of the day, I think I and all of us, I probably can speak for all of us in saying that I just want an Australian national team that I can be proud of. More than simply being like good or bad. And that was the prevailing sentiment I had from Thursday. I was just so empty watching Australia against Japan and how we approach Japan, because should that represent us? It probably does, but should that represent us? Should that be us? Should that be football in the way that we approach the game, in the way that we approach opposition, in the way that we respond to what happens in football? It's like I just want to be proud of Australian football, and I want us to succeed. And this is what ultimately drives our own commentary and criticism at times with respect to Australian football. The reality is, like I said, an inability to actually understand the evidence at hand leads to very volatile decision making and a very volatile discourse, and ultimately Australian football continually eating itself.
For a coach whose whole mantra is believe this, believe that,
didn't show a lot of belief.
No, and not a lot.
You're losing your belief.
Yeah.
Not much to believe in.
No, it was a very. There's a lot of insecurity in the way that Arnold approached these games and these fixtures. There wasn't a lot of belief in his playing group to accomplish more than the sum of their parts, and that's what I liked about watching the Postecoglou teams. And I know his reign is romanticized now because of what he's doing with what he did with Yokohama and what he's doing with Celtic. And that's what I also felt about the Hiddink Socceroos sides. For both of their flaws, I felt as if they actually had a go. They wanted to take the game on, and
not really. They had Viduka.
Okay, but Postecoglou didn't have Viduka, but there was an ambition there, is what I'm getting at. There's an ambition to be better and to outplay teams, and to not just arse our way to a World Cup. And I just didn't get that. Through the entire Graham Arnold era has made me feel embarrassed about watching the team and not proud.
Yes.
So I was speaking to Ante on the day of the game, and I was telling him about, like, if you were to picture like your ideal scenario for the Socceroos right now, and you'd say, okay, you're going to have an absolutely full stadium. We are going to have a bunch of players playing in the top leagues in Europe. We're going to play great attacking football, maybe one or two young guns from the A-League coming through, super exciting, or playing in Asia or something like that. And if you think about like the ideal night, that what we'd really want, amazing atmosphere, great players, great football, a really knowledgeable, a coach that really makes you proud to represent you. We're kind of failing in all of those aspects. There's not one thing that we can tick there, which to me is kind of the biggest issue, is that I wish we could fix it with, just change the coach. Just, put Mclaren in or something, and we muck it into why Jamie Mclaren isn't playing. But, and even you look at, it was a pretty depressing night for Australian football. I know the weather was awful, and Stadium Australia is a crap stadium to watch football in. 40,000 people,
watching Hrustic skits at the end of the game was very microcosmic. I'll say that.
In what way?
In that moment, he encapsulated all the frustration of people who view the game in a different way to the embedded school of thought in Australian football.
Jack Pantelios says...
Hey, Joey, man. Joey wanted to say something.
He's going to get there. Jack also wanted to say something, and Jack did the right thing writing a comment. Joey, you should do the same. 2 words to describe Thursday night. 2 words to describe Thursday night. Lifeless and uninspiring.
All heart, no soul.
Much like Arnie, at least his public persona. Joey, go ahead.
Cool. Firstly, I want to say 2 things. One, I was pretty flat after the game, but I wasn't flat for very long afterwards because when I woke up the next morning...
people listening via podcast, Italy. It's a photo of Italy losing to North Macedonia, I believe is the official FIFA word. That's all I'll say. People refer to it. We're not going to get into it. It's a long thing. Call it whatever you want. Call it whatever you want. That's what I'll say.
He's absolutely reappearing in some Preston Macedonia gear once that camera comes back on. That image is absolutely going to make another appearance if Nick Nabano decides to jump on the screen tonight. That is absolutely. I would think, like I said, I very profusely apologise if I am going over grounds that has already been covered in the preceding half an hour before I joined. But I was thinking about the wash up from the game and, the discussion surrounding, let's get Popper. Let's do this. Let's go out and get this coach or get this coach. And I just felt like sort of helpless in a way because I didn't feel as though there was going to be any sort of actual lessons learned from proceedings. Like it sort of felt like, there's all right, let's go out and get a local. Which local's got the best resume? Popper, bring him in.
Exactly the same as Arnold.
Which was exactly the same as Arnold's, which, listen, I'm not going to, we can probably discuss him a little bit better on if more smoke begins to appear surrounding his candidacy. But so I'm not going to talk about the validity of Tony Popovic as Socceroos coach right now. But it just felt to me like it was just who's got the best resume. There was no thought surrounding why has Popovic been successful at club level. What sort of football does Popovic play at club level? Does that translate to their sort of situations that the Socceroos will be facing? Would that work? Would the circumstances surrounding how Popovic has been successful at clubland, the control that he has over clubs, the ability to bring players in to suit his system, basically the king of the castle type status that he has at his clubs be transferable to the national team? And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't, and that process doesn't have to just be exclusive to Popper. It works for Kis Norbo as well. Does Kis Norbo, young up and coming coach here in Australia, is the prevailing narrative? Won the premiership double last season. Does Kis Norbo's style of football work? Does the fact, would that transcribe to the Socceroos? Does the fact that CFG basically have bankrolled the strongest roster ever assembled in the A-League's men competition and have basically told him the type of football that he needs to be playing affect what he would do at a Socceroos level? I would think it would. But these are the conversations that I would feel you would need to be having in these spaces. And I was just sitting there reflecting, I don't think they would be the conversations that would be had. I think it would just be get the local with the best resume or get the best foreigner with the best resume. Don't worry about fit. Don't worry about what type of football do they play. Don't worry about what type of football Australia as a nation. Stoll, you need to change the graphic. It's the A-League Women's, not the W League. The ticker on the bottom of the screen. or if it was Josh. I don't know who's host and who's producer.
First of all,
he's making a serious point and still managing to just
First of all, Joey, let me tell you one thing. All right. So first of all, no one who's listening to the podcast, which is the way most people produce, would have even seen that graphic. So you've just made up some crap that we don't need. All right. So that's unprofessional. I'll bring it back to people.
I will get back to
women's grand final.
I will get back to finishing my point. And I don't feel like if we were bringing in whether it was a foreigner or a domestic coach, my feeling is that the chances of that coaching appointment being centered around not just this discussion of how they play their football, but how the Socceroos actually want to play their football would be at the center of it. I have zero doubt that the conversation would talk about stuff like giving it a go, playing for the badge, playing hard, not backing down. But there would be less, to steal a line from Ante's article the other day, there'd be lots of talk about the heart of the team, but not much about its soul. And that was my reflection, after the game. Like, is that a conversation that would happen? And I just don't think it would.
Not on Channel 10's post game. Look, speaking of having a go,
I didn't even watch that, but I hate it. Even though
I watched it back. I'll watch the back. I needed to watch it. I needed to watch it. It was fucking disgusting. Sorry, I don't care. Fuck. No, it's got to be out there, man. How the fuck can you fail in such a massive responsibility in directing the discourse? How can you fail in such a way?
I mean, historic precedents. Simon Reynolds says, give Farina a go. Jesse Jenkinson makes an even better suggestion. Big Sam. Sure.
I'd be all for Big Sam just because I'd get the revenge, and now all the people making fun of my northern accent would have to deal with Big Sam.
But look, we appreciate all your comments. Funny and more serious, like Devik Naidoob. Apologies if that's not correctly pronounced. To Josh's points, I'm struggling to think of an Aussie coach whose Socceroos team I would be proud of watching. And maybe that comes down to kind of, we talk about it every week, but the lack of risk-taking by A-League coaches. That's probably why we're so high on someone like Arthur Pappas, who was obviously assistant under Ange. But at the same time, that would be, I'm not saying Arthur Pappas for the Socceroos, huge step up, although I might have him ahead of a lot of other names. Edmund, our young, said Milicic was in the conversation. Wasn't it amazing? I mean, I was pretty amazed to see him there based on watching MacArthur this season.
To be fair to Milicic, under questioning, he responded that he wasn't at that level.
Good job, Ante.
So as a figure that should be that will remain nameless, observed, apparently he's not at the Socceroos level, but Football Australia deemed him at the level to take the Matildas to a World Cup. But we can ignore that.
Shout out to Jack Pantelios. He says, Stoll is the host, for fuck's sakes. Joey, great comment, Jack. Just backing me up.
Hey, you know what? Actually, young boy, Lockie Flanagan just came out. Like he's won Soccer Twitter for the night. Just check out what he said. Australia, the Australian World Cup qualification.
I think I can get it up.
Global financial crisis moment. It's
all right. I'll let Stoll figure that out while we film. Joey,
would we like to hear what Tony Popovich said when I asked him about reports linking him to the Socceroos job?
He would control all aspects of Socceroos games.
No, he effectively said, well, when I said that it was a question that had to be asked, is it though? And then he followed that up with, I'm not going to talk about that. Graham Arnold is coach of the Socceroos.
Oh, that's
Socceroos lost Tony Popovich, man. Fair play.
Yeah, that's a classic. I'm angling for the job. Ante, you brought up Lockie Flanagan's tweet. So the caption for those playing along at home, when Graham Arnold unwittingly gives the perfect answer to a question and refers to genre as the number 10.
That wasn't my question, by the way. That was Don Bossi's question.
I don't get it.
That was Don Bossi on behalf of me, I'm pretty sure.
They're not confessing. They're bragging.
All right, good job, Joey. Just ruined the audio of that. Just had to go over the top because he wanted credit. For those who missed it, it said they're confessing. That's what that is. They're not bragging. They're bragging. They're not
They're
confessing.
not confessing. They're bragging.
Jack Pantelio says Kevin Muscat. Kevin Muscat for Socceroos.
No,
Not a lot of.
Not yet.
I mean, the only person who watches Yokohama F. Marinos at the moment on a regular basis of the four of us is Ante. So
Yeah, that's true.
I'll see to your opinion. But results-wise, he's not doing too badly. Watching from afar.
Yeah. Look,
But
not now.
they've got a very talented team.
That's right.
A question from earlier in the show, which we didn't quite get to, was from Jesse Jenkinson. And he said, anyone finding any reason why Arnold doesn't have any faith in Mclaren as he barely plays under Arnold's tenure? Now, so Mitch Duke started up front. And look, I think we've been frustrated with Mitch Duke multiple times in the Socceroos and with the Ollie Roos. What did you guys think? I'll start with you, Joey, because you probably give the longest answer, about Mitch Duke starting up front in place of Jamie Mclaren. And then also, I guess the question as well is, there was a lot of talk about Jamie Mclaren post-match about this wedding and blah, 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 blah. Give me your thoughts on even just that conversation. And then Josh, you jump in on the back of that. And then Ante, you get angry and say some stuff afterwards. And then I'll make a joke. And then we'll move on and interview Pokuah.
Okay. The conversation was completely ludicrous. If the Socceroos had beaten Japan and were suddenly heading to Saudi Arabia, so let me say it again. If the Socceroos had beaten Japan 3-0 behind a Jamie Mclaren hat-trick and were now heading to Saudi Arabia knowing that a win would automatically qualify for the World Cup, maybe that conversation would have some validity, even though it would have to be phrased in a much more lucid, articulate and intelligent manner than what it was. But the fact that Jamie Mclaren got 5 minutes off the bench in a game. Oh, I've gone all dark. The fact that Jamie Mclaren got 5 minutes off the bench in a game in which the entire Socceroos played terribly, that he was thrown in. No, they didn't play terribly. Let me say the fact that Jamie Mclaren got.
They did play terribly.
I don't like attacking players, but yeah, okay.
They did.
But Jamie Mclaren got 5 minutes off the bench in a game where he had no capacity to impact it in any meaningful way, given the manner that the Socceroos had set up. It was ludicrous that he would serve as a whipping boy and, quite frankly, a distraction in the aftermath of that game. Jamie Mclaren probably wouldn't have made a difference given the way that the Socceroos were set up in that game. But the fact that that was even a conversation was completely ludicrous. Jamie Mclaren was not the reason the Socceroos lost 2-0 to Japan. And to devote any time to him in the aftermath of that was bizarre, especially in the aftermath where Matt Leckie got released too. Are they going to slam Matt Leckie after the Saudi Arabia game? He didn't play against Japan either.
Josh,
have you seen how tough it is to book a wedding at the moment? Like, jeez, there's a massive backlog.
Hey, especially a crow wedding as well. A lot of numbers. Minimum
There's a
400
lot of
people.
personal circumstances surrounding Jamie Mclaren and his fiancee, challenges they've had to deal with that it is perfectly understandable why they would just.
Like, as you
haven't you ever taken time off work for a personal event?
Yeah, but I mean, look, the
I
bigger.
haven't, but I'm completely sad.
But you're a psychopath, so
Yeah.
you know what?
You're screaming in a press box at 10:18 at night.
Joey's filing while he's having cancer treatments. Like he's a maniac.
To make a serious point.
PK does not fucking blink when I come into press conferences with a needle in my arm, by the way. That dude does not blink.
I mean, okay. I was about to get in big trouble then. Yeah, I was about to get in big trouble then. Josh, get us out of trouble. Get us out of trouble.
Whoa. All right. I just wanted to jump off. This isn't so much answering the question, but I wanted to jump in on the CFG thing because I do, even though I think McLaren missing the game is totally reasonable, and the fact that the post-match broadcast was dedicated to slamming him for his lack of commitment is insane to me. Is totally insane. I totally agree with Joey. I do think it is interesting that CFG are not playing ball in the same way as other A-League clubs. I think coming in as a kind of powerful external force means that they don't feel I guess peer pressure to play by the same unwritten rules as everybody else. The fact that they didn't release Curtis Good, the fact that Matt Leckie ended up getting recalled and then playing the next night. I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that they are flexing their muscle a bit here, and we've got this weird dynamic where the A-League is newly independent and CFG have a huge influence in running that, and they seem to not want to play ball with the Socceroos and with the federation in exactly the same way. And I think that I don't think it's anything serious for now because it didn't really affect the team too much. But I think it's something to keep an eye on down the line because I'm not sure that, they really care about the Socceroos whatsoever in the same way, an Australian back club might.
I think,
well, if their plan was to sabotage the Socceroos for UAE, it's gone completely off the rails.
Look, I find this issue. What's lost in this discussion is who is the player in question? Like Curtis Good. He dropped a fucking stinker against Melbourne Victory on the weekend before that.
Yeah.
An absolute stinker. Oh, but he scored from a corner, so it makes the fact he did drop a stinker for his primary task like irrelevant. Imagine that. Can you imagine Curtis Good in the game against Japan?
I mean, my point is not so much about Curtis Good as a player. It's the
no. I know that.
Someone
but I'm saying like that
game when everything like
is ignored.
You're aligned with me on this, Ante, is that international football is the pinnacle and should always come first, no matter what. So
no, I agree. But like,
but the fact that he was called up is a different question.
Playoffs. We're talking playoffs.
Ante, I gotta ask you, Crow wedding or dead rubber v Saudi Arabia? You let me
know. I'll do the church and then go to Saudi. Then go to the
Hey, you know what? Could have just done both. Destination wedding. I'm sure everyone would have loved to fly to Riyadh.
No,
you could have gone to Dubai.
You can't miss out on the chance to see the next mass execution in Riyadh. You never know. You can't miss out on the chance to see that.
Hey,
all right.
About that F1 this weekend.
Hey, on slightly lighter notes, Jonathan Pentelios says Arnie has no idea how to use McLaren, best striker in the A-League, and give him 5 minutes to make an impact. Jonathan must be related to Jack, so shout out to the Pentelios brothers. Yes, we're brothers. Shout out to the Pentelios brothers.
Yes. But look, I think talk of Jamie McLaren is misguided.
He played for the Socceroos in the Asian Cup. We saw it. We saw the Socceroos under Arnie with McLaren.
We played with McLaren and Yanu up front against UAE. And
Yanu came off the bench, but
there were significant portions of the match where we played with McLaren and Yanu, and like we weren't good because the reality is our striker is not the fucking issue.
Yeah,
it is deeper on the pitch.
But I mean,
and then that relates to how we approach our football. Fuck, like
this is, I guess, is the total frustration with so much that went on Thursday night, which is like everything is like all the things that were pointed out, and a little peek behind the curtain, but I was wanted to play bad take bingo after the Socceroos game because it was so predictable, what it was going to be. I mean, it wasn't as predictable as I didn't think Jamie McLaren's wedding would get blamed. I didn't think Ange Postecoglou handing caps out like Tic Tacs would get blamed. That definitely wasn't on my bingo card.
Is that what he meant by tiki taka?
Look, you know what? But we make fun of it, but it's pretty serious how, and we've spoken about this extensively over the course of this podcast, but it's a serious issue just how much the Australian footballing public is not getting what it deserves from a standpoint of commentary. And Thursday night was just yet another example of that.
Yep, they're going to have to wait till Monday night in Stan Sport FC, produced by yours truly. Yes, Nick shameless plug is in.
I have to say I miss Foz on these games. I do. I really do.
You can hear from
Notice
him
how Stoll
tomorrow.
said he produces Stan Sport because they won't let him anywhere near the host.
You know what? But fair play to them. That's their right to do so. Simon Reynolds says, for real though, Ange had me believing we had some kind of planned direction. As with Brisbane, though, it seems that the plan left with him. And this is very much
It's like an A-League clubs.
Yeah, and this is the savior complex, and this is probably why that we were quite critical, a few weeks ago of like Western Sydney Wanderers giving, Rudan, regardless of Rudan, giving him the whole, oh yeah, you take care of everything, all good, because back in the day we got Popper to take care of everything, and it seemed to work out. Even though when we got 5 other guys to take care of everything, it didn't work out at all. It was a really. One thing I actually wanted to ask that Antonis Pagonis brought up is thoughts on Football Australia, just ignoring the fact that the under-19s played and got a draw, I think it was 2-2, versus the Netherlands. Where is the transparency about the pathways? Why are we finding from players' social media stories? Joey, I know you do a lot of youth stuff, Ante. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go for Joey if you want.
Like,
frankly,
yes,
I don't care.
but-
I do care. I do care, but look, I've had far too much football to watch, so I haven't watched the game yet. And until I watch the game,
in the current circumstances of gestures wildly at everything going on around us, especially for someone like me that's also been neck deep in A-League Women's Grand Final coverage this week, I've got drawing a 2-2 with an under-19 side in the Netherlands. I would have loved to stream, but I'm not going to start a ruckus over it. It's great. It would be great to hear about it, but yeah, I'm not going to start a ruckus.
Hey, Ali Qual scored, and I thought he was supposed to be playing for South Sudan. So there you go. Maybe they kept it under wraps because they didn't want South Sudan to know that he was playing for the Australian under-19s.
Paul, Paul Turner says, once upon a time on SBS, we could watch all our national youth sides play and build up in the week would be on par with the national teams. I will say, Paul, as someone who worked at SBS for 6 years, I don't think we very rarely ever showed youth friendlies. And this was a
back in the day, though. Yeah,
tournament.
They did.
Yeah, okay, back in the day. But you know what? Them's were the old days,
Yeah,
all right?
Now, think about the old days. They're the old days.
Yeah, the old days.
Yeah, look.
Listen. Moving forward, it shouldn't be that hard to just whack a random stream up on YouTube, even if you've got no commentary. But
that's true.
It's not the end of the world right now. Maybe when we fix everything else, we can start to get into the minutiae of not being able to stream a junior international friendly with a European-based young Socceroos squad.
Yeah. Edmund L. Young is asking a question that I can't answer for career reasons. So it's the good as time as ever to move on and go on to the second big thing that we wanted to talk about today. And we need to welcome our local cyberbully, the person who we get when we're scared of fights that we may have on the internet. Pokuah Frimpong, everybody. Round of applause.
Hello, guys. Hello. I thought, I would move up to the title. You guys have, dawned on me. So, you know what? I'm gonna feed right into it. I'm okay with it. Honesty is the best policy.
Pokuah, you come to this game in the same way that a corner was coming into the game in the W League Grand Final. That is dangerous and full of possibility that anything could happen.
Absolutely.
Pokuah, give me your thoughts. Victory. They did it again. 2 years in a row now. They've come up to Sydney.
Joey, get away from the camera. Get away from the camera.
She was rooting for Sydney.
No. Let's get this straight. I wasn't rooting for Sydney. I wasn't rooting for Melbourne Victory. I was rooting for players. Okay, it's a different thing. Okay, it's a very different thing.
Like me in basketball.
You know what?
You were rooting for Sydney FC. Your words were, they've been the best team all year. I want them to win.
No, Joey. I said they've been the best team all year. They certainly have. I don't think we can debate that. I think that's a fact. But you know what? Melbourne Victory and Jeff Hopkins did a tremendous job with this whole entire final series. They played amazing football when it was needed, and they showed a level of expertise in playing finals. Like in many sports, playing finals and playing the regular season, they're two different things. And Jeff Hopkins got it tactically correct. He shut down Sydney's midfield when it really mattered, and they put away their chances. Whereas Sydney, they got forward on occasion, and Vine had a lot of, she was winning that battle with Nevin quite early on. But she slowly, faded from the game. And I think that maybe she got a little injury and just wasn't able to get to where she needed to. I have my opinions on Courtney Vine, but that's for another day. But
I think it was for 2 weeks ago when you
hey, I didn't. Hey, I gave honest opinions, okay?
That's why we love you.
But you know what? Sydney probably played the better of the game, and I think Ante Jukic said that in his post-match presser. But if you don't take your chances in football, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Ante
Jukic.
Jukic.
Ante
Jukic would have given the worst press conference of all time.
Are you kidding?
Guys, can you imagine a presser for like?
I'm tempted to start a TikTok, social media campaign to get Ante as a national team head coach. Come on, I'm ready to do it, guys.
Ante Jukic or Jukic? Either way, I'm nervous.
Jukic right here. Come on, TNC host.
Holy shit!
Hey, Joey. You kind of pulled a bit of a face when Pokuah said there's no doubt that Sydney FC have been the best team all year long. Was I reading too much into your body language there?
Look at this host. He's on the board.
Come on, Joey.
Thank you.
It's difficult to judge the best team. Victory haven't been the best team all year. For periods of this season, they were dog shit. However, this competition is so compromised, I'd be hesitant to call any team the best team all year simply because of just how screwed up everything is. Sydney didn't leave New South Wales until the 10th week of the season. Teams don't play each other twice, all of this sort of stuff. I mean, we saw Sydney have to leave the state and their form dipped severely. As a result, I'm just hesitant. I'd be hesitant to declare any side the sort of standout across a whole season. You can say looked to. You can't say clearly, just because of the heavily compromised nature of the league. That's something that can't really be fixed until we get a full home and away in professionalism or something closer to it.
I'm with you on that, but I think their ceiling when they played their best football, they showed they played the best football. And that's why I called them the best side of the season, because their best was better than everybody else's best. Is that an incorrect statement?
I think that was
one might argue that City at their very best, with their game style at their very best, could have pushed them.
Not when it mattered.
Absolutely. I absolutely.
Not when it mattered, yeah. But we're talking at their. Pokuah is using at their best hypotheticals here.
Yeah, but this is the very point of postseason and finals. Like, you have to show it when it matters in finals. However much I don't agree with the final series.
Oh yeah, and in that case, Victory have very deserved champions.
Yeah, that's right. And so they've pulled off, in the same way that they snatched the trophy in 2018 with the men, they've gone and done it this year.
But the video was broken.
I'll tell you what the win is. I'll tell you what the grand final was a remarkable victory for. My good bloke theory. Could you find a better bloke than Jeff Hopkins in Australian football?
What an absolute
look at that. His side on the road 3 times. They absorb everything Sydney threw at them, and they still win.
I will say, Antonis Pagonis earlier said, I think the Socceroos need a hashtag nice guy TM. So
maybe, Jeff Hopkins for Socceroos. None of this.
There you go.
Nice guys finish first. This just in.
I'm not going to say they're a nice guy. Come on.
Ivan Stragan says Lawrence, Thomas, Casey Dumont putting their bodies on the line in a grand final.
I like that.
Pokuah, thoughts on Casey Dumont's performance? She was player of the match.
I think well deserved. I was a little bit critical of her goalkeeping because we had a little discussion about it in the press box, but she really stepped up when it mattered, and that's what you got to do in the biggest games. If you don't do it, then who cares? But she did, and she made very smart decisions. That even that Adelaide game, if you look back on it, sometimes she came out of the box and looked a little bit shaky, but today she kind of took that out of her game, and particularly she hadn't been training all week. She in the biggest moments, she did her thing, and good for her.
Joey, thoughts on Casey Dumont?
1,000%. It's deserved. I mean, do we have a cheap plug graphic? Because I'm about to do one.
Go for it.
she is the subject. She is the symbol of my analysis. She just symbolized this victory squad. Down and out, batted pillar to post, found a way to win. I mean, you've got Casey DeMont. Remember the Adelaide game, the Pride game that they lost 3-1? She was taken to hospital that night, sucking on the green whistle with a suspected broken leg. Obviously, she didn't break a leg, but she didn't miss a single start. She didn't miss a single game. She's barely trained across the past month because she's been hurt and sick. She was in bed for large periods of this week preparing for the game. She copped knocks the biggest one was Charlie's Rule in the 76th minute. Prior to that, she had been hit 3 or 4 times and requiring treatment for knocks that exacerbated her pre-existing, illness. Melissa Maisels was warming up at halftime because Casey DeMont was sitting on the floor of the change room looking like she was about to expire. The fact that she not only played the game but was the clear best on ground, Victory don't win that game if Casey DeMont's not in goal.
Speaking of Joey's brand strength, she might not have scored today, but the cerebral assassin, Melina Ayres, not exactly unimportant.
Joey, when you do that piece, I don't know if you've already written it about.
I've already written it. It's what I've been working on in the background throughout this entire podcast, trying to cut it down.
Please tell me that you use the phrase or the word courageous, because God does Australian sport love courage. We are obsessed with courage. Right? It's the courageous 100 in cricket. Under pressure, it's the courageous going into the pack. The shin boner spirit or whatever that AFL crap is, where you go into the courage, right? And in football, evidently, because it seems that we lack courage, even though I would say receiving the ball in between lines and playing someone through is extremely courageous, receiving the ball under pressure. But Joey, if you just hammer the word courage in there, not in there at all.
I haven't used it once. I've used resilience. I've used determination.
A little sub-editor, I'm going to need you to just shove in courage there, and then the national papers will and then like the kind of wider Australian sports media brain will understand. Oh, courage, yes, we know. We love courage.
In fact, I'm getting rid of determination and replacing it with ability to rise to the occasion.
The courage, you need the word, the courage, mate.
The courage to perform.
Out of interest, Joey, have you included anything on her off-season fitness regimen? Because I think that probably put her in better stead to bounce back. Because she was posting all about it all over Instagram. She's half the person, twice the player. Like she came into the season in tip-top shape, and I think that held her in good stead to perform. When it came to the back end and that backlog of games and all the hits that she took. She's become, I think, a more lithe and agile goalkeeper as a result of her off-season discipline. And I think she deserves a lot of credit for that, for really, really taking that element of it seriously and coming in the best shape of her career.
Did you have that?
I'm going to add one sentence and then link to her Instagram post.
I like this. This show is now just us critiquing Joey's yet.
We're stopping Joey's life.
Hey, another good comment coming in. Antonis Pagonis says, Ante is very proud of his Sly Triple H reference. And for that, Ante, I'm banning you from the rest of the show. It's time to say goodbye to Ante. Ante Jukic, not Juric, although he's got Juric in there.
I do apologize.
Goodbye, Ante.
No, you can't do that shit, man. That's actually, I won't confess that on this show. But that's not.
Well, look, I will say it's been a pleasure to speak to you, Ante, but one Triple H reference is enough for me. So we say goodbye to you and we continue our conversation regards to the W League. Pokuah,
it's clear as day. One Triple H reference. Nick is the authority here, so we've got to move on.
Joey
I think there was something dodgy there. A red flag. I don't know what it was.
He's been waiting all week, since Friday, for this moment.
It's the evolution of the podcast. We have to move on from these Triple H references.
All right. people in the comments, please let me know if there's been a sneaky wrestling reference that I didn't pick
It's
up on.
just
And
the way the game is played.
shut up. I know you're saying things that I don't understand. This is annoying. Pokuah, Sydney FC. You said they were the best team all season. Kind of what went wrong today? Because I thought initial stages they pressed quite well. They're winning the ball high up the pitch. I think they were going quite physical against Chidiac, and kind of it seemed like they were trying to like rough up her and really disrupt Melbourne Victory. But even though they had a lot of shots, maybe they didn't really create too many clear chances. What did you think of Sydney FC?
I think a big problem with Sydney FC this season at times has been their front three's lack of. It has been unable to really connect with their midfield and actually utilize the space and the opportunity the midfield provide them, because Taylor Ray and Mackenzie Hawkesby had decent games, and Victory didn't completely shut Hawkesby out, which I thought if that was going to be their path to succeeding. That midfield of Simonson, who really didn't do anything like of note in the entire game, and Princess Abini had some joy early on, but they kind of faded in the game. And Connie Vine, one of the fastest players in the league in a not very fast league, had success, but they don't make clear-cut chances at times, and they lack a little bit of creativity. And I think at times their defense, even though Nat Tobin's had a good season, that second goal, she doesn't clear that ball out. And just like in that City game they played, she was at fault for the reason they conceded that goal. So they have these lapses, and if good enough teams will capitalize on that. But luckily for them, at times they've been good enough to either come back or really minimize those chances. But today they just really faltered in that respect.
Joey, your thoughts on? Oh, sorry, Josh, go.
Yeah, sorry. I thought it was interesting. Nat Tobin's post-match interview where she said they were really calm and they thought they could come back because they'd done it in the semi-final, and they didn't panic. And maybe they needed a little bit more urgency, to be honest, in that situation. They clearly believed that they were going to do it this year, and they were going. And I don't know. There seemed to be. They seem to fall short somewhere along the line in that capacity, that they were going to play the same way that they always do and come out on top. Whereas Victory went up a level. They do in these games because they've got these big game players like Amy Jackson, like Melina Ayres, who is clearly just a mentality giant, as Jurgen Klopp would say. I think they were probably drilled really hard during the week to say, this is just another game, don't get too nervous, just play your football, relax. And I think Victory were very much, or at least it seemed to me that they were more of the, like, let's get effing pumped up, let's, rock their shit. Because it seemed to me that Victory lifted their level significantly at the back end of the season and in the finals games, and Sydney were the same team as we'd seen in the regular season, and maybe there was a disconnect there.
Joey, thoughts on Sydney?
Listen, on another day, Casey DeMont doesn't turn into a brick wall. Their radars are on, and we're talking about how they've just equaled Melbourne City with the most championships of all time with a 3 or 4-0 win. That has to be acknowledged. This was absolutely a game that Sydney could have won, perhaps should have won, with the amount of chances that they were able to create. But it does, I think, come back. It's difficult to say mentality, because claiming that Sydney doesn't have a winning mentality is ridiculous. They've been to 5 straight A-League Women Grand Finals. I think they've been to 9 overall throughout their history. They've been to every single finals campaign as long as this league has existed. There is clearly a mentality of excellence and winning at Sydney FC. But then at the same time, they've made 5 grand finals recently and won 1. They haven't been able to get over the hump. And perhaps it has legitimately been a case that just the bounce of the ball has gone against them and it just wasn't their day. When you flip a coin, 100 times, if you infinitely flip a coin, eventually it will reach the point where it goes heads 10 times in a row, simply because that's what fate means. But Victory have clearly demonstrated that playing for finals football is a thing this campaign. They went into Cooper's Stadium against a team that had played them off the park under a month before, and won pretty well. They played Melbourne City, who had beaten them 5-1 earlier in the season, and I didn't sneeze. We're all good. I didn't sneeze. We're all good. They played Melbourne City, who had beaten them 5-1 earlier in the season, and they comprehensively beat them. They went up to Sydney, where they had been beaten earlier in the season. Sydney, that had had a week off, were rested, ready to go, that threw absolutely everything at them. As I wrote in my piece, threw every ounce of violent venom in their veins into winning that game, and they still managed to hold out. I was
just going to say, vile venom veins, you got that, but you can't get courage in your article. Come on, Joey. You got the talent, but you just, the crucial errors.
Would you like to know a secret, Nick?
I always would. TNC exclusive?
It's a Triple H reference.
Oh, Jesus. I've been defeated.
That went over my head. It's okay, Nick. So it happens.
Shout out to anybody that recognizes the William Regal promo on Triple H that line was uttered. But it's difficult to slam Sydney because they've been so consistently good for so long. They'll absolutely play finals again next season. Wouldn't be surprised if they're in another grand final again. But there was just something wherein they couldn't get it done today, and Victory could.
I think.
Are you smiling at me?
Nothing that can be repeated on this podcast. Pokuah, jump in, please. I'm smiling at Pokuah's good answer.
Put it in the chat.
I think for Sydney, they set this expectation for themselves to win both things this year, and I think it's great to set goals at the start of the season for football teams. Is really important to know where you're going and how you're going to get there. But the burden of those 4 grand finals in the past, I think, really weighs heavily on this group, particularly with the same head coach and a lot of those players who've been around, like Nat Tobin's been there for those finals. I think it's in those pressure moments that when they're down, they shouldn't be down. I think a lot of those players must have been thinking, "Oh, we shouldn't be down. We're the best team." It really it makes it even harder to come back in those moments. And I think that's what's happened to Sydney. They've stuck in this loop of trying to defeat those ghosts of the past, and constantly trying to set these goals, knowing they're a great team. That they need a little bit of a change. I don't know what kind of change it is. I'm not smart enough to know that. That's for smarter people to decide. But those real ghosts of the past, I think really haunt them. It's particularly in those final moments when they really needed that goal. They lacked a level of creativity that maybe they just had a mental block in this game.
So, you and Josh do Radio Dub podcast. Joey, you cover W League all throughout the season. Starting with you, Josh, and I guess this is a question for everyone, but would you say...
Sorry, quick thing, Nick Stoll. Did you say W League?
What I said, Radio Dub.
No, but you said W League.
We have a little sound effect that goes off every time someone uses the wrong name for the league on the show. It's a little cash register. It's one in the swear jar, and you just put one in the swear jar, mate.
I just knew it by its name for 13 years, 12 years, and then one day I was like, I got a different name. Okay, I'll get there. A-League Women's. Has this been a successful season? I know we talked about all the issues that they had with COVID and stuff like that, but has this been a successful season even given those circumstances? And going into this next season will be the last season before the 2023 World Cup on home soil. what would you like to see change for next season? Not like long term into the future, but next season, what would you like to see? Josh, starting with you, and I'll go around.
Full home and away. Just do it. Club owners have to put their money where their mouth is, because they were talking a big game, I remember, when the Congress wars were happening, and they were talking about A-League independence, saying we're going to invest, and yes, COVID, whatever, that's a convenient excuse for a lot of teams. But the APL and everyone and PFA, I guess, have backed themselves into a corner on this one, because we've got quote-unquote equal pay, which means the minimum wage for the A-League women's is the same as the men on a pro rata basis. But because the season is short, they're paid peanuts. And, Fiona Wirtz has to work at Macca's. And a lot of the players are on the minimum. A lot of the teams in the competition, and not really the finals teams, but the rest of the competition is almost entirely comprised of players on minimum salary. So you simply have to extend the season, give this competition some competitive integrity to attract better players to the comp, in terms of players who, because it skews crazy young, and that can't be the best set of players that we have in the country, a set of 16, 17, 18-year-olds. As great as it is to see young players get minutes, some of the best players in the country just play in their local NPL because they can't justify the commitment of taking time off work, of going into state, of all the sacrifices that you have to make as a player in the A-League Women's for a pretty small pay packet. So making it a longer season, making it a more regular commitment, and making that wage package come up by default because they have to keep this equal pay deal, I think would be a big step in the right direction. I think it's something the APL has to do, because they've gone ahead with this rebrand. They've called it the A-League Women's. We're the A-Leagues now, so they're the same. But you can't just name it the same without treating it the same. I think that's an empty virtue signaling gesture that is essentially marketing nonsense unless you treat them the same.
Pokuah, what would you like to see change?
For me, I think the A-League Women's, I think it has the potential to be one of the best leagues in terms of women's football. I think there's a real area of growth and a real potential to move into that space. So, but it's different, it's different to A-League Men's. It's a lot harder to, create it like as a global standard of some sort. But A-League Women's, that's actually something that should be an objective for the people in charge. And a longer season, 100% needs to be the key thing. I think for me, this season hasn't been, we've had exciting football, which is always great to see, but it hasn't been a success because there hasn't been a big enough level of change from this season to the last season. If you're trying to grow your league to, to fulfill those promises that you say out loud, it's great to say all these things, but if you don't put any, actions or do anything for it, then that's, it's worthless. I don't really have a care in the world for those statements. I'd love to see, I think we need to set this highest standard for the A-League Women's in terms of football that's being played as well. And I think that speaks a lot to the point Josh made about, the league being really young. If we don't have a national league that's having, players who are older and, have higher skill levels, how can we expect the Matildas to, reach that same sort of level as well? And that's really important. But they're probably the key things, and paying the players more, it will just be a byproduct of creating a better, infrastructure for the league. So that's probably the key things that I want to see out of it next year as well.
Pokuah, you watch the Women's Super League in England,
Yep.
which I think most people would agree is the best women's league going around at the moment.
It's probably the most competitive.
Spain's got a couple of good teams, obviously.
A couple of good teams.
Yeah.
Visca Barca,
Don't let him
absolutely pumping
Don't let him
Madrid.
trigger you. Don't let him trigger you.
Okay, well, whatever. But I'm saying it's a skewed competition. It's
Yeah.
not that level. And then
I think the
there's
Champions
America,
League's
of course.
skewing as well.
But
Yeah,
Everything
there's-
was.
what
there's
is
probably-
different? What is different about England? Because you watch it.
I think the big thing that's different about the four big leagues in France, England,
Germany
Spain,
is pretty strong.
Germany, Spain, yeah, and America is they obviously the pay and having a full season and setting up an actual system to really develop players. I think that the A-League Women's don't develop their players; they kind of have them for that one season contract, and they don't really. It's really hard for players to really know who they're going to play for the next season. better officiating. Not that the FAWSL has got some sensational refereeing, which it's been atrocious at many stages. But I think seeing a high standard for that because it demands more of the players, and better infrastructure. And actually, the thing the FAWSL has done really well over the last few years is is really promoting it over like on the TV and actually having it everywhere. I think Rob Holding from Arsenal spoke about, when he just switches on TV, there's more games available to watch and see. And the fact that, some A-League women's games aren't getting shown on TV because they can't get a camera guy down there, it's pretty pathetic if I'm completely honest. So having it be everywhere and putting it in people's faces makes it makes it a hell of a lot harder to ignore it and build something around it.
It's funny you're just talking about like cameras and stuff. Even today in the final, a good overall production, and well done to Channel 10 for that. But there's just little things that really frustrated me. For example, not enough replays on crucial incidents. There was the goal there that I think, at first I was like, was there a handball there? There was a goal that was ruled out. And then I just saw especially like for that kind of thing where there's a bunch of bodies in the box. I actually didn't even know who had supposedly fouled who. And they just showed, and I was like, I have no idea what happened. And they just moved on. And it's one of those things where right now, if we'd seen 10 replays, we'd be able to discuss that in much more detail and you get much more debate. I think, that would be something really good to have. And, we talk about having more of something that being good. We got more guests coming in. Nick Debano joining in.
Nicholas Debano. Let's get
Nicholas
it right.
Debano.
Government name.
1 hour and 35 minutes into the podcast. I like Debano's like the dude who, when you're at like a house party and then like 1 a.m., like this suave dude with a nice mustache just like turns up and like, you're like, man, that dude's so cool. I don't even know what he was doing for like this whole night, but he just comes in, looks good. Debano, how's it going?
Wait. What am I then rocking up 30 minutes in?
Just late.
That's fair. The guy that no one invited in the first place. You're like, oh, why is he here? Who did you hear from before? That kind of thing.
Who gave
Debano, please.
Oh, actually, first of all, Debano, congrats on the wedding. But it's a shame you're missing the Saudi Arabia game. I really question you can get to the national team.
It's been a tumultuous week, guys. But what better way than shutting up the critics by scoring last night? It was just fantastic. So. It was.
It's been a tough week for Nick. I'm surprised he's fronting up, sitting next to Joey of all people.
Ooh. Oh, just you wait till who also is going to sit next to me soon.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, guys. I'm surprised how quiet Joey's been in the box today. I was actually
Nick. He's just getting ready. Don't get happy. He's getting ready.
It's a Trojan horse.
No, Joey.
For the podcasters, really once again, we are seeing the photo of Italy.
Just to get that off. Yes. Basically,
Stephen Gunavas, party at Debano's place when England get knocked out of the World Cup.
100%.
Well, you know what the line is. I don't see how you can hate from outside the club. You can't even get in.
Well, you're not going to be able to get in the club because the party's going to be at my house.
We're already in the club, mate. We're already at the World Cup.
Yeah, well,
this is the nations that have qualified for the World Cup.
But
I haven't qualified.
Hey, Joey,
I haven't qualified
in the past few years. And,
Ghana hasn't qualified.
You're not going to get an invitation to the Confederations Cup. So we get to go to the Confederations Cup, fellas. How good is that?
I will also say, Joey, you guys are in the club, but like typical Englishmen, you'll drink too much, embarrass yourselves, and get chucked out of the club before the party actually gets started. Happens every World Cup. You know it, I know it, and everyone who's ever been to a nightclub full of English people have done it.
I'll have you know that I am a teetotaler.
Can I just say, just in terms of this whole thing, if England don't win the World Cup, we all win the World Cup. Doesn't matter if your team's even in the World Cup. So you know what? Like the trend has been actually somewhat favouring England because, like, what was it? Semi-final, final. Maybe now it's going to like reset because they've gotten to their end. They can't win it, so they're going to go out in the group stage in 2022. So
you do realise that the squad England took to the Euros still wasn't peaking yet.
Yeah, and they still didn't pick their best defender yet. So that's also an issue because Gareth Southgate doesn't have a Serie A
So you admit England have scope to get better before the World Cup.
Yeah, but Gareth Southgate won't do that. This is not a World Cup podcast. We'll save that for later. But yes, it has been a tough week. Friday morning, phone was thrown away. I didn't want to talk to anybody after that. Like, I was saying to Joey and a few of the others beforehand, just stop it. I was saying, like, there was this moment when the ball went in and there was like this pause, and I was just waiting for my phone to just go, just completely, gangbusters. And when it did, and I turned off my notifications to Messenger, to Signal, to Instagram, to Twitter, to
Tinder?
Snapchat.
It was off the grid.
Tinder?
I went off the grid
on
for
Tinder.
That's it.
ABC,
No.
always be closing.
And then after that, it just became a period of just, needing to vent. So I was talking to every Italian under the sun, including Stephen Gunnovitz, just completely ranting. I need to get it off my chest. The voice messages, you think Teo's talkback was long? This was long. Like, there was analysing the state of play. Where's the next lot of players coming from? Are we going to get there? Blah, blah, blah. Are we screwed? Is it all okay? Mate, it was. You think like the discourse after the Japan game was bad? You should have sent the Debano household on bloody Thursday.
All right. I'm going to cut off the Nick Debano pity party because we've got a much more important guest joining us as well.
Anna Harrington, welcome
Melbourne
to the podcast.
Media Mafia.
We have
Here
we have
go.
an adult in the room. We have an adult in the room.
Two thorns, guys.
Be careful.
There's a rose between two thorns.
I'm honoured to make it here for hour 3 of tonight's podcast.
Yes.
It's not that far wrong, to be honest.
So
Wait up.
if Debano is the cool dude who shows up kind of like at 1 a.m. to the house party and like looking suave, is Anna the one who's like in charge of the whole house and he's like, all right, guys,
Yep.
I gotta keep
She's
you guys
hosting
in
the
line.
event. She's hosting
Yeah,
it.
she's like the one who's it's her house. She actually owns the house.
Yeah, got home and the little brother's just been having all his mates around, and that's
Uh,
it. Everyone out.
You're like a
And
week
he's
old.
drunk, but you're still making him pick up all the cans.
I'm not-
Stuff around.
I'm not even going to say how much older the both of you guys are, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well,
Look.
Nick, let's
Yeah.
just mean. Come on, man. It's just me.
Look,
Pokuah.
just quickly, we'll just quickly wrap up and we'll get back on the WA Grand Final because we have Anna with us.
Sorry,
and this
Nick
is
Stoll.
great.
What did you say again?
I said A-League Women's.
That's it. Nick. Anyway.
Yeah, we need a shock collar on you.
Paul Turner says, can't wait for England to be knocked out by one of the other remaining olive oil nations. Shout out Spain, Croatia. I don't know, Greece probably not getting there.
Macedonia.
Macedonia,
Why not?
yeah.
Why not? Dare to
Portugal,
dream.
bit of olive oil. And maybe we'll save this for later, but Jesse Jenkinson asked, can we ask Nick Debano thoughts on Christian Volpato, 24 hours laughing at the Socceroos, and then Italy not qualifying the next day? Look,
Can we,
man, life comes
Can
at
we
you
get up
fast.
Can we get up the Mourinho? If I speak, I'll be in trouble because I actually,
prefer
no,
really
not
not
going to
to.
lie. There you go.
I prefer really not to speak. If I speak, I am in big trouble. In big trouble. And I don't want to be in big trouble.
Yeah, no, that's
Volpato's
fair.
manager, actually.
Yeah, look, it's very apt. It's very apt. No, look, I mean, look, it was like, come on, mate. Like, I don't know. I don't really want to get into it, guys. I'm tired of this, man. It's
I'll
getting,
get
it's
into it.
actually getting to a
That
point-
was bullshit from Volpato,
Yeah, look,
all right?
I'm with you, Nick Stoll.
Like, no.
I-
Like, on some look, we've all been 17, 18, whatever it is. We've all tweeted out or done some social media stuff that we all regret. I'm sure you can go back and find plenty from dumb things I've said, even when I was 28, never mind 18. But what I'll just say is it just this is very good from Josh Parish there. For those listening, we have the emojis up on screen. What it just shows to me just a shit attitude, because even if you've chosen to go with Italy and Italy is your choice thing, to me, you should still be supporting Australia, even just for the fact that you have grown up with some of the young kids who are coming through as well, and you played at that level. I have no problem with him going to Italy and playing for Italy and hopefully having a great, successful career for Italy. But don't be laughing at Australia when we're going through one of our worst nights ever. I think that was not on shit attitude.
No.
And unless you have
To be fair, I think it was a reaction to him absolutely copying it when he posted that selfie in the Italy kit, which is a proud moment for the kid. Like, I
Yeah, it's true.
disagree with the ratioing he got there. Like, I think
It's
Why are we
true.
talking about Volpato? We're supposed
Yeah,
to be
I know.
talking about the dub.
Yeah, why do we
Yeah,
have to
sorry,
talk about that
sorry,
anymore?
sorry.
I've already spoken about this enough, and it's getting to.
We have a
point where
special
I am-
guest.
I am-
Special guests.
Yeah.
All right. Judo move,
Don't
judo
worry,
move.
guys. I'm done. I'm done.
Volpato,
Stoll-
no good. A-League Women's, very good. Let's go. Anna
segue.
Harrington. No, not awful. Give me your thoughts on today's dub grand final.
I mean, on the face of it, I don't think anyone could disagree that Sydney were all over Victory, especially early, and Victory pinched it. And I mean, it easily could have been 3-1, couldn't it? Like that goal that got chalked off. I don't think anyone really knew why. It didn't look like much of a foul. It looked like Princess Abini more got in Jada Wyman's way than any Victory player. But I digress. Victory, once again, have just shown how much character they've got, how much class they've got. They've done it the hard way 2 years in a row, and this was actually harder because you had the additional week of finals, so they had to beat third place Adelaide, second place City, and then obviously first place Sydney, who had the week off. But it is, as I said, it's one of those ones where Sydney were on top, especially that first half, just peppered the goal. Casey Dumont just turned in one of the best grand final performances you'll see. And it's interesting, actually. I've speaking to quite a few different people. There's a lot of comparisons to that Melbourne Victory men's team in 17-18 that, beat Sydney with the Terry Antonis moment. And then Lawrence Thomas gets absolutely battered on his way to winning the Joe Master medal in the Heist in the Hunter. Thankfully, because the dub's great and doesn't have VAR, we didn't have to worry about any VAR drama this time around.
I will say we could have used a few more replays on the broadcast. I'm not saying we need to do video replay, just a few more replays on the broadcast.
I mean, that's just our eternal quarrel, isn't it, with this? So, yeah, more replays, maybe get the mini match up nice and early. But
It'd be nice to be able to rewind.
We can't go on this.
We can't demand too much, can we? So, but you can't say too much more about what Jeff Hopkins has done with Melbourne Victory in terms of taking them from the absolute doldrums, from the lowest of lows to the highest of highs, back-to-back years. They had to do it the hard way as well. They had, I think, semi-final heartbreak a couple of years in a row. Last year, obviously broke through. And then this year, losing your captain round one in Kayla Morrison. Joey did a nice piece on Leah Privatelli stepping up, and that was a beautiful moment today. But she was the rock. And you just didn't know whether they'd ever come back from that. They were so rattled. They've admitted as much. They've had ups and downs. They did some astute recruiting in terms of obviously Alex Chidiac first, but Brooke Hendricks, I think, is the signing that's really brought it all together in terms of defensively. And they're as strong as any team mentally. I think plenty of teams copping as many chances as they did would sort of crumble eventually, but they copped it, went into halftime at 0-0 and clearly went, we're still in this. Why don't we throw a bit at it? And they got what they deserved.
I think that is Victory hasn't lost a game that Bunge and Hendricks started together.
No,
they entered the finals not having conceded a goal with them on the park and conceded a few since, but did not lose a single game where they actually had two first-choice centre-backs playing together.
Well, that's it. And you look at that Sydney front three that's been, so brilliant over these past few years. Courtney Vine was relatively well held today, I think, by Courtney Nevin, who's had a pretty patchy season overall. And, they did look to try and exploit her early, but Vine, bar that little toe poke, was relatively well held. Remy Steamson had a couple of moments. Abini started really strongly, and then Polly Doran sort of stepped up. But it's really difficult. You have to feel for Sydney because it's 5 grand finals in a row, and they've lost 4 of them. And I guess the question marks then come over, can this team do it in a big game? And were it not for Casey Dumont pulling out some worldy saves, they probably would have. It's pretty heartbreaking for them.
I mean, the consolation for Sydney players is they get to live in Sydney, a far superior city. I think we can all agree.
Did you see the weather in Melbourne today?
Flashing down rain in Sydney.
Yeah. It was glorious today. Blue skies, 27 degrees.
Fantastic.
When Ante came up, he said to me, he goes, look, you guys at least used to have the weather over us. Now you don't even have that. And look, it's true. It's true. Harry, can you talk us through the post-match moment between Privatelli and Kyla Morrison? Just
Kayla, not Kyla.
You're getting Kyra Cooney Cross and Kayla Morrison.
It was beautiful, wasn't it? Whereas as I said, Joey wrote this piece about just getting all these messages from Teo pop up. Anyway, what was it? Yeah, Leah Privatelli, obviously the captain that probably no one expected. She and Amy Jackson, I think, were vice captain this year. And Privatelli's gone to another level with Morrison not there. Different role. She's led from the front. She just goes harder and harder every week, which, given her injury history, is extraordinary. And you talk to people at Victory and they can't speak highly enough of her character. I think she showed that today where I think it's one where people always talk about. It's like the Luke Beveridge, Bob Murphy moment in the AFL. Not to Melbourneize it for you, Nick, but, you know.
I genuinely have no idea what that means, but yes, good luck to Mr. Beveridge.
You are such a Sydney sider.
Yeah.
You don't know that.
Yeah, well, because Sydney lost that grand final.
Yeah,
Wait,
as well.
He might not know that.
Yeah, he probably
From
doesn't.
Sydney.
Honestly, Buddy scored his 1,000th goal or whatever 5 minutes from my house, and I had no idea. I was on the toilet and I heard and I was like, what's going on in the SCG tonight? Anyway, we're going to get into that later on.
We're reaching new heights today, but yes,
hit her
anyway,
on.
fantastic
We're an hour
moment
50.
for.
Shut up, Josh. Harrow, go.
So Kayla Morrison, who was so emotional when she came up, and it was beautiful, the tears from both of them, and Leah Privatelli's just called her up and, you know, basically effectively said, this is for you as well, because she's their leader, she's heart and soul. They had the number 18 kit for Morrison on the back of their bench all season. She's been sort of ever present at the club, as you've seen with their Victory TV or just on bench or in the stands, and I think it was it really summed up those teams. Like we saw this with Natalie Tatham last year, who went down really early in the season. They've tried to sort of bring those players, make sure they're right in the fold and feel included the whole way. And it really sums them up. They were talking about this with Joe, and we were patting out that you look at them and they've got this hard-nosed, intensity, winning mentality about them. But there's also so much care in this group, and that's where I think Jeff Hopkins and you look at Leah as well. They really leads from the front. There's and I've been just shamelessly spruiking my own chat with Casey Dumont and Jeff Hopkins today. And when you hear these
plug on this show, never.
Well, you know, there's one place to do it. But they're hard-nosed, they're fiery, they're competitive, but at the same time, they're both real sort of gentle giants, 6 foot plus, but there's so much care, and you get these players and coach that just have this fantastic connection, and you can understand why they could get through those 7 games in 23 days. They scrape into the finals, they barely get there, and now they're champions. They've done it like the hardest way possible, and I can't imagine the amount of mental strength it would have taken. Joey was on a fair few of those presses or Zoom calls, be like, well, Jeff, you're up again in 3 days. And he'd be so calm about it. I think the only time he showed any sort of real frustration was before game 7, which was against Adelaide that they lost pre-finals. It's the first time he sort of went, yeah, you know what, this is actually a little bit towards the far end of...
Well, he did express frustration another time when towards the end of that streak where they obviously weren't going very well, when the questions that inevitably have to come with that period of downturn was asking, you know, is your team capable of doing anything? He got very frustrated with any sort of question that could potentially be framed in a manner that questions the capabilities of his team at the end of that run, because he knew what they were capable of when they had rest. And it probably speaks to him as a coach and that locker room environment that he knew that they were a lot better than they'd been able to show because of that run home, and that's what frustrated him as well, I think. And he's been he has been vindicated 100%. In the best possible way.
It was a real indictment, I think, on the league, and we talked about it at the time that you had teams doing this, especially in this semi-professional environment. And you looked at Victory as soon as they got a week's rest under their belt, they go out and beat Adelaide, and they did it again. And it's quite incredible, a real, as you said, testament to both their coaching group and their players that they could always just sort of look and see the end of the tunnel, like they could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Go, we're going to get these rests and we're going to be up there and we're going to do it. And the other thing is, and I know it's a clubhouse favourite on TNC, is keeping hold of Alex Chidiac was huge. I think I'm in a good room to say that.
you know what to say.
It might make it popular bit of commentary. Because that's sort of not only because of her quality, but having a player who'd had such an impact after, you know, a relatively short time, after building up fitness, had to build up game time, was so influential for her to then be willing to make that call at pretty much effectively a very quick decision with a tight deadline to say, no, I'm playing my best football here. Yeah. We're getting the best out of each other. Victory and I are getting the best out of each other. to make that decision, to cut short her time in Japan, to commit to the end of the season, I think it would have just given them all a huge lift. And that was just before that Adelaide game that they lost.
Yeah.
But knowing that they had a player like that who was still building form ahead of finals, it just seemed like it gave a massive lift. And obviously we know that Brooke Hendricks had come in and was building form. They got Claudia Bunge back from international duties.
Biggest one as well, Melina Reyes.
And then hadn't even got to Melina Reyes.
Yeah.
Like, it just sort of went piece by piece, and they didn't rush Melina Reyes back in. They gave her some minutes against Canberra, I think, and then
which was a brave call because, like, I mean, at the time, Margot Rabin or Michelle Heyman puts it anywhere other than straight at Casey DeMont, they lose that game and they're out. It would have been so easy for them to panic there, and at the time, it felt like Jeff was being perhaps a bit needlessly cautious, but once again, he's been vindicated.
No, they're funny like this, aren't they, coaches? But yeah,
some of them.
Yeah. But yeah, huge, exactly. Ayres comes in, right time, has an impact. It's just seemed like the perfectly crafted end to a season, and yeah, and then today just really topped it off. Like, you're not going to see many performances as strong as that Casey Dumont one. The interesting thing for me now is how do they keep the squad together? You'd think a few will be off to Europe. What happens next with the A-League women?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out on this pod before we come in.
But like, I mean, they're going to have to extend the season. That's pretty clear. The path towards professionalism has to be there. But for both Victory and Sydney, I think we're going to see another era of transition because we're going to see some players go to Europe. I don't know if they'll all necessarily come back because they're not wanting to juggle 2 seasons. I would expect Victory to keep a lot of this squad together because most of them are real Australian-based players. You'll see a couple like Cooney Cross and Nevin go off. Whether they'll want a break is something, but.
Well, having sat in the Ante Jukic and Jeff Hopkins presses afterwards, I actually asked Ante about keeping his squad together, and he actually acknowledged, like, you know, it's going to be really hard. I don't know how many players are going to come back, but he sort of just like hoped that, you know, enough would come back for next year and the team's going to be very different. So that was also one thing that I thought was quite interesting. The other thing that was interesting from the press conference that I heard that what Casey said was she was dealing with, like, it just felt almost like concussion symptoms. Like, it seems like she was feeling a bit sick.
Illness.
Yeah, it just felt like they had, because she was about to get her blood pressure up, get sugar into her at half time, because it looked like she was going to come off. I think it's the most amazing part of that as well. She looked finished at half time. Yeah.
Right?
And like, Mel Maisels, I thought she's definitely coming on in this game. And we spoke about the Lawrence Thomas sort of, you know, almost headband on, you know, very similar. Again, the red goalkeeping kit in New South Wales, again with the presser afterwards. But it was really good to see how happy Casey was afterwards. There was this really lovely picture that got put in from that Getty dropped as well of Jeff and Casey. And Jeff was talking about Casey afterwards and she had the hand on her chest, just like, you know, she just looked so happy that, like, after all the injuries and all the setbacks, she got that moment as well with Jeff, who gave her chance initially. So I thought that was actually a nice, pretty cool full circle moment as well, considering she was in the stands last year as well for the grand final too.
And yeah, she described that as bittersweet last time around. I think a lot of people, especially those that are sort of new to women's football, don't know how highly rated Casey Dumont has been for a very long time.
She was part of that big 4 coming through.
Yeah, she came through, and there was Bree Davey. Off you go, Bree. There was Mackenzie Arnold.
Who does she play for now, Nick?
Well, Collingwood,
yeah. Mackenzie Arnold, and then Lydia Williams was a couple of years older. And there were plenty who thought Casey Dumont was the pick of the bunch. And Jeff Hopkins has always rated her really highly. But you look at that list of injuries, like, you'd feel unlucky if you copped them in your team, let alone one player. Like,
there's a few players.
Lacerated liver, the Achilles last year. She had this really significant. I remember she actually came back from that really significant hip injury that put her out of action for a while. And it wasn't too long after, you know, she had the lacerated, I think it was maybe the lacerated liver, and then the ACL came quite soon after. Like, just a torrid run, enough to make anyone quit, especially in the, you know, as we mentioned, semi-professional world that
you're doing it for the love of the game.
And she also works as a nurse part-time, which part-time, full-time when she was injured. But she attributes that to part of the reason why she got past those injuries, because she could look at it from a medical sense. She had something else grounding her. And it really is just an incredible story. And she's always had the quality, but she said that having the Achilles last year allowed her to really home in on getting really fit. And you've seen it this year. She's so mobile. She's getting to everything. And today, like, she's obviously 6'1" as well. There's not many keepers in women's football who could get to some of those. Like, you look at that Mackenzie Hawkesby header, and you just look at the look on Mackenzie Hawkesby's face after she goes, how you know, no one else is getting that. Like, I've hit that just about perfectly for anyone but Casey.
There was
Dumont.
literally a shot at this same venue last week. I think it was Rebecca Stott.
It was
Yeah.
it was the only
Like,
shot that City
but
had
it was
all
when
day.
the game was still
Yeah.
delicately
Alive.
poised. and
19th
she
minute.
hit it top corner, and Dumont made this ridiculous save. It was like, far out. Like, gee, she really got her hands to that one. So, yeah, you talk about that height, it definitely plays a big factor.
I mean, like, yeah, she's one that's had a ceiling. Victory have a few players like that have just had high ceilings robbed of them by injuries. Privatelli's another one.
Yeah.
When she's a teenager, she needs surgery on both of her hips. That means she's 4 centimeters shorter, and her gait gets changed. She gets concussions. She gets numerous injuries.
So many soft tissue injuries.
Yeah,
right?
like she finishes the season strongly, goes back to the NPLW, gets injured, and has to start again. Her mum is telling her, I think this is probably your last season, Leah. I'm not sure how you could do this anymore. And she keeps coming back. And then she gets the opportunity this season. She starts, the most games she's ever started. She's the captain. She scores the most goals she's ever scored, plays the most minutes. And now she wins the championship. So Victory just have a series,
There's so many good stories, right?
When we're talking about the perseverance with Victory, just this grand final, their ability to maintain just their cohesion in the face of that pressure, it's just a microcosm of what a number of their players have had to do for their entire careers. Just take the punches and keep on going.
Well, Brooke Hendricks, even I was seeing an interview with the A-League's website. She'd lost an FA Cup final. She'd lost an Italian Cup final. This was the first final she was going to win. And also, I always love the story of Amy Jackson, who was influential at Victory, but didn't win it. She didn't win a championship there, her first go at Victory. But she was obviously huge at City for several years. Fell out of favour, goes to Victory, and goes and wins a couple of championships. And at 34 is, as you say, still the heart and soul. It was so appropriate that she popped up for a goal, because she can be so dangerous, especially around set pieces as a tall midfielder. And that's the other thing. When Hendricks came in, it allowed Jackson to play
as a
midfield,
6, her
actual position, and they've just had some stability there. Having Jackson there to, as we sometimes put it, just be there ready to kick people, has allowed Chidiac and Cooney Cross to actually do what
just get in opposition's heads, it has to.
With Chidiac, especially today, she was fantastic. And
getting in the subject of getting in people's heads, you have to also give a shout out to Polly Doran, living rent free in half of Sydney FC's starting 11's heads. It looked like throughout the game. Just little shit stirrer. You gotta love that.
Love it.
Her and Mackenzie Hawkesby were going toe to toe a couple times there, and it was for a player who, as I think we've mentioned during the week, thought she might not be here because she thought she was going to be suspended. She was.
To be honest, Victory probably don't win that game if Privatelli's playing at right back and they've got to bring somebody else on.
Withers or someone
the
else.
dynamic, their defense completely changes. The cohesion isn't there. Sydney absolutely break through.
Josh, you wanted to make a point about Chidiac?
Yeah,
of course he
did. What?
Shocker. No, I just wanted to add to. Shut up. I just wanted to actually add to what you were saying about her staying on. Is she was on Radio Dub a couple of weeks ago with myself and Pokuah, cheap plug, and
cheap plug on TNC. What?
Yep. And she revealed that. There was this deadline, this hard deadline that the club that she was contracted to, Jeff United Chiba, were enforcing, and they were trying to get some flexibility on that. It was sort of just this arbitrary date that they'd set that they had to have her back in Japan by, and they were trying to extend the loan. And then, it ended up being a choice that she had 6 hours to decide whether she wanted to get on a plane and go back to Japan or terminate her contract. And she decided to terminate her contract and stay with Victory until the rest of the season. And that, I think, speaks to the power of this. Well, it speaks to how poor a situation was in Japan, to be honest. The coach playing her as a left wing back. But it also speaks to just how highly the players at Victory value the team chemistry that they have and the camaraderie that they have. Every player that we get on, we speak to, they just can't speak highly enough of the group and how well everybody gets on together. And sort of up against Sydney today, the Giants of the competition, the team that has set the benchmark, sort of reminded me of, the main character at the end of the anime using the power of friendship to defeat the villain who's been training for 3 years.
I love it. It is a great story, Josh, to be fair, with Chids. And she's been fantastic. The way I've looked at it these past few weeks, it feels like they were just what each other needed. Like, Chidiac desperately needed game time and someone that a coach and a team that really backed her in. And I was speaking to Kyra Cooney-Cross the other day. I was like, how's it been playing with Chids? And she's like, yeah, like quite often Jeff will be like, stay back, and just let Chids go off and do her thing, which I imagine has been an adjustment for her. But it shows, I guess, the selflessness that is in this team, that you've got the player who was, let's be honest, Kyra Cooney-Cross was the star last year and has not had a great season this year. But to be able to go, okay, I'll take a back seat and not necessarily play where I play at my best, to allow someone else to do the role that suits the team best, which is Alex Chidiac being an Energizer bunny, apparently, all over the joint, is what's helped them get there. They've made the allowances. They've seen this player come in and gone, no, she's going to make us better. And she has. And it's been a win-win for both the player and the club. And, I mean, I don't think I need to convince any of you that I think, and I think a lot of people do, that she should be a lock in the next Matildas squad.
She is absolutely
should be a lock. Like, if you're looking at club form, if you're looking at players improving week on week, if you're looking at someone who'll give you everything game after game.
A new dynamic, a different type of player in that midfield.
Just the energy, and energy is probably a cursed word on this podcast, to be honest.
Energy in the right circumstances is allowed.
But what she gives is something that the Matildas need, but also just in terms of reward for form and for doing the right thing, which is going, like you see these, some players, they get told, go to Europe. You look at Claire Wheeler, went to Europe, perfect. Alex Chidiac, clearly, based on her own, what she said, and based on what the messages are from everyone, including Victory, is she just needed game time because we all knew what she could do. She's gone and done that, and she's excelled. So the reward should be you pick her in this squad, and it will be really disappointing, I think, for not obviously Chidiac, who said she's tried to pull that out of her mind while going about her business with Victory, but not just for her, but I think for everyone that's got to watch her this season, and for Matildas and A-League women fans if she doesn't get in this squad, because it's the perfect example of someone ticking all the right boxes, performing, getting minutes.
That's the thing. If she doesn't make this Matilda squad, the entire Matildas apparatus is opening itself up to massive questions. I mean, it's like if Chidiac, one of the absolute standout performances in the A-League women's competition this season, isn't getting picked, the question has to become, what's the point of A-League women's then? You're not picking the best players you're not picking the best players from that. Like, why should any Australian players stick around if they haven't, if somebody like Chidiac can make it or not? I mean, we have seen some players...
Her performance in the semi-final, or the preliminary final, I should say, against City, best individual performance in the women's competition since Jess Fishlock. It was it's a big shout. I think Harry would be a better player.
That's a very, very high bar.
Hannah Wilkinson scored 5 goals in a derby.
I think if she'd scored scored one, because we were like, come on, Chits, like that one that she had one on one.
Yeah, the finishing was left a lot to be desired. I could see that.
But
it certainly drew lots of plaudits, even from her fellow players, and I saw some of the Matildas players posting stuff on Instagram about, oh my god, how well she played,
Yeah, quite a few of them. So clearly the respect is there, and she's a very well-loved player, I think, amongst her teammates, and very well-respected as well. So hopefully this can be the turning point in getting her back, not turning point, but getting her back in the fold properly.
Because the thing is, we've seen with Ali Green in her statements to the Sydney Morning Herald after she switched her allegiances to New Zealand.
Multiple news outlets. She's been very clear.
Players of that age cohort are beginning to question the selection process surrounding the Matildas. Players... Chidiac's not old. She's what, 23, 24?
23.
So she's
23.
So she's not some grizzled veteran here.
No.
She's ostensibly entering her prime football years.
She's had 2+ years just wiped out with horror injuries and not getting playing time. There's a player whose development's been set back and is really now reaching, I think, the player we thought she could become maybe 2 years ago. She is a young footballer.
She is still a young footballer, but we are seeing, like Ali Green saying it, players in their 20s are asking, what more than I have to do? And if we see players like Alex Chidiac come back and dominate in the A-League women's the way she has and still not get picked, what is that going to do for basically any player not already in the Matildas setup? They will, if that can't happen, what hope do I have? Will be
What
the
hope do you
question.
have, Joey?
Well,
Oh,
Joey,
I've
I
got
don't
Very
think-
few,
I don't
very
think,
few hopes.
I don't think you've cut it for the
But yeah,
Matilda
true,
squad, but
true.
next
You do want to see these players rewarded for effort, and
It's
it makes sense.
imperative to a competitive national team, because not only do you want to see players rewarded for their performances, but you also want to let the players in the squad know that their position is not guaranteed.
And look
They
at-
need to keep it up as well.
Well, look at the list when we saw Courtney Vine get a call up when everyone was saying this player, everyone was clamoring for her, and she got it, and she was pretty impressive.
She was,
Holly McNamara is
like
obviously
the
a younger cohort, but
and battled
that's-
injuries at the Asian Cup as well.
But she impressed when she came on
Yeah.
before that injury. And you just look and you go, this is the age bracket that we need to be filling.
This is
because-
ostensibly their prime years. We're entering a home World Cup.
No, they're not in their prime years yet. The problem is we've got a group of players who are in the prime or entering the end of their prime, and you need players to come up and fill the next level. Like it's you need players that are in their early to mid 20s coming in and getting lots of caps because they've got a lot of National League football under their belts, and that's what you ask for. So. Yeah,
And it just
hopefully we
works.
see more.
We've got friendlies against New Zealand. They're here in Australia in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
If you're going to
Players
cap,
just out of season.
if you're going to cap A-League women's players, these are the games to do it in.
Time.
Hey, can I just say it's 11:30 at night on a Sunday. You guys, I mean, me, Josh, and Pokuah are in our houses, but you guys are still at work ostensibly. You've had a massive
Finish
day
at
in
3
terms of
o'clock, Stoll.
3
I'm
o'clock
finishing
covering the A-League Women's Grand Final. Fools if anyone says W League Grand Final. Covering a victory game. And you guys are still there. It's 11:30 at night, not getting paid by at least this podcast, and still bringing so much energy and enthusiasm. So kudos to you. I very much appreciate it. But I think we need to leave it there for now on the A-League Women's Grand Final, because we're in the third hour of this podcast and we are yet to
We're
talk
going to have to
about
put this
any
podcast out as a
A-League games.
two-parter.
Yeah,
We'll have to put this out as a two. Put one podcast out for Socceroos and Grand Final, another pod out for the A-League.
Yeah, we literally have not talked
about any A-League men's. Nothing.
We have not talked about a single A-League men's.
All right,
just
you
irrelevant.
guys
Irrelevant.
have. Yeah, you guys have fun doing that. We're leaving.
Hang on. Do you want to just ask? We'll do some. Well, if you guys want to leave, we can do Victory Wanderers, but we'll just hear.
I can't leave. You're using my laptop.
We can do it for like 2 minutes. And then we can.
All right, Harrow, feel free to leave.
You guys
anytime.
doing 2 minutes? 2 minutes?
We can do that and then we can leave because.
Nick, take
All
charge.
right.
Host
Melbourne
duties, take
Mafia,
charge.
you guys work out. I'm just going to mute you for a second. You guys work out what exactly you're going to do between us. Harrow and Pokuah, I will thank you very much for joining
He's
us.
muted us.
No, Harrow, I'll put you back on to say thank you.
Okay. I'm just saying
Well,
bye.
Just wanted to
She
say
called
thanks
you
so
her
much.
friend and you muted her,
I
you
said bye,
bastard.
friends. I said I called all of them my friends.
Look, you go check out the Far Post to hear more Australia A-League women's
You're
chat.
tired, Nick.
I'm so tired. Like I said,
The
11:30
best
at night.
host wouldn't be tired, Stoll. You'd have the ticker.
The best
No
host,
ticker.
add ticker. There's 2 hours in. All right.
Yeah, but you
Pokuah-
still have ticker.
Pokuah, we still got to get on to what's a better sport, football or AFL.
Mate, is
I see you guys are doing the all-nighter, so I'm going to call it.
All right, see ya.
All right. Thank you so much, Harrow. Thanks so much for joining us. Pokuah, thank you as well. You'll be on Radio Dub this week.
yes, we shall.
Tuesday
Check
night,
that out.
7 p.m.
Tuesday nights.
Check that out,
Bye-bye.
check that out. All right, bye. All right, guys, let's race. Calma. It's all good. All right, guys, we need to race through the rest of the show. So let's try and do this.
I'm torn between my desire to go home and eat and my desire to screw with you and make this go for 3.5 hours.
1 minute per topic is my proposal. All right.
Let's go speed round.
All right. COVID ravaged box office jets. Harrow, stop interrupting the pod. You're done now. All right.
Yeah.
The COVID ravaged box office jets beat Sydney FC. Josh, tell us about this. How good was this? Story of the weekend in the
Why are
AFL.
you starting with the games we didn't watch? We want to go home.
Shut up then. Shut up. That's why I asked Josh.
I just thought this was really funny because, the Jets played the youth because they weren't allowed to postpone the game and they won And it just makes me happy when you see a teenager scoring goals. Like
Absolutely.
it just gives you
Archie Goodwin,
it just gives
2
you
goals.
it just gives you hope. And hope is not a strategy, but it is necessary.
Yeah.
It's
Can I
fantastic.
also just say, great assist for the first goal.
Was it
from,
Moragas?
Moragas, yeah. It was really good. I was like, speaking of great assist, Daniel Pena had another assist. He's up to 10 or 11 assists. I'm seeing conflicting numbers across the thing. My understanding is the A-League record is 11. I did read somewhere that Thomas Broich might have up to 15. But I think, and this is one of the problems with the A-League not having stats readily available. In fact, I went on to keep up now. We won't get into that.
Just tweeted Andy Howe like the rest of us do.
I did, and he said, I'm off for 2 days. I'll get back to you on that. But anyway, Daniel Pena, 11 assists. This kid is on loan. Please, Jets, sign him up to be a permanent move. Nick DeBano, do you have anything more on the Jets before we move on?
They are right now primed to make finals, fellas. They are
That's
right in
right.
the mix. They've got 2 games in hand on Sydney. They're only 3 points outside. They went to a back 3. It looked really good. It seems like they're finally working it out, guys. Maybe they're working out their leaky defense. And Archie Goodwin looks like an absolute find. And I think the interesting part was that he is actually still growing into his body. So that's why he was out for so long, because he had growing pains. Because he's only still 17. Like, he's still filling out. And he got on the end of a brilliant header. And him and Moragas actually combined last season when they both last played together for an Archie Goodwin goal. And it was nice to see that callback again for that one. And it's just good to see more kids sort of, after the week we've had speaking about, where are the next generation of Socceroos strikers? Well, if Archie Goodwin can continue on this trajectory and keep getting minutes, you know what? Who knows what's going to happen with him? Sky's the limit. There's still so much time for him to get better.
I will say with the Jets, next 3 games, 2 of them are against Perth, who are obviously terrible, and another one is against Brisbane, who are also pretty terrible. So that could be 9 straight points for the Jets. And don't you even forget where you heard it here first. Box office Jets. We've been writing them all season. If they make the 6, this podcast is undefeated. All right, let's move on. Late drama in victory. The Western Sydney Wanderers. Joey, Nick, you were at the game. Talk us through it. What happened?
Popovic wants VAR canned.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is that what he said post-match?
Oh, yeah.
I'm embellishing a little bit.
Do you guys want me to read the quotes?
Yep, if they're short.
All right.
Mate, you said we were going 1 minute on the Jets and we went 4.
Okay, so he basically wasn't happy because in the lead up to the penalty, apparently Tomislav Mclaren was offside. We went back and had a look at it from not the best angle. That's the only angle we were given because the replay's not up yet. He actually looked offside. So Bacchus played the crossfield ball. Mclaren was initially offside. He came back, won the header, and it came off Hamel's arm. So at the start, we had no idea about this, mind you, heading into the press conference about whether, there was an offside. And then Popovic came in and he said, basically, we should have cleared the situation. In the lead up, Mclaren was offside. There's a problem because we've got VAR. He doesn't check it. Basically it costs us the game. I'm happy that he says, I'm happy the decision was given as a handball, but it should never have gotten to that because he was offside in the first place. And he goes, look, we're checking it for the red card, for the Miranda challenge, which was a clear red. We're using it for the handball, but why aren't we checking the offside? What's the use of VAR? It's that same, you feel like we've heard this script over and over again, right? Like we had Nick Montgomery here a few weeks ago saying literally exactly the same thing. We've got VAR. Why aren't we using it for these decisions? And like it was in his eyes clear as day. So the other thing that I really
when you learn algebra at school and you get that order of operations thing like BODMAS or whatever, we need that for the video assistant referee, like the order of operations of things you have to check.
The
thing is we want quick decisions, or do we want correct decisions?
But the number one thing from this game, guys, was, and I think Joey can attest this as well, it should never have gotten to this. Victory should have put this game away a lot earlier. Marjota looks like he's lost all confidence in front of goal right now. Rojas,
at least he's an Italian attacker that's actually playing in A-League men's, unlike a certain Italian attacker.
And Economidis,
no confidence in front of goal. That he'd blend in with the Italian national team right now.
Josh,
You got him.
Stop it. No. Just in general, Victory should have won this game. Yeah,
they had 2.51 expected goals.
Yeah,
noticeable coming out of this game also, Mark Rudan, in his post-game presser, flat out came out and acknowledged, and he was grateful for the framing of the question, saying it as well. that this was a game that he felt the Wanderers would have lost 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10 throughout the past few years. He says that, he's hopeful that this is the sign of a turnaround, that the Wanderers didn't lose this one. They were battered pillar to post to much of this game, went down a goal in injury time and still came back. And to be honest, he does kind of have a point. Under Carl Robinson, I don't think any of us would have anticipated Victory probably would have scored 3 or 4 goals throughout the contest purely because the Wanderers just would have given up, stopped giving a shit and folded under pressure. So despite the fact that they were thoroughly outplayed, didn't deserve a point, still green shoots for the Wanderers.
Can I just say one thing about Western Sydney? We've had a look at their run home over the next 8 games. And can I just say
6 in New South Wales.
Extremely favourable. They only have to play 2 sides that are inside the top 6 in Sydney and Macarthur. In between that, they play. So they've got Sydney on the weekend. They host Brisbane. They host the Mariners, mind you, very good form, the Mariners. Newcastle also in some good form. They go to Wellington. Of course, they go to bloody Wellington because, Roods, it's like an obligation. He has to play in Wellington in a COVID-ravaged fixture. Like it's like the first game back. Perth Glory away, Wellington again at home. Then obviously, as we mentioned, they play against Macarthur. They'd fancy themselves in a few of these games, if not most. So there is every chance that the Wanderers might have a bit of a late run in them because they don't have to play City. They don't have to play Western United. They don't have to play Victory. They don't have to play Adelaide. I know that the latter is quite deceiving, and there are some of those teams below them or in around that picture in some good form. But I've got to say, if this is the resilience they're going to show, there's no reason why they can't, eke out getting a draw from these games, getting some points. At the end of the day, they still have a game in hand on Sydney. They've got the same amount of games played as Macarthur. They've played 2 less games than Adelaide. So there's every reason why they can't make up that ground the next few weeks.
Let's move on. Macarthur 0, Melbourne City 1. Josh, your thoughts on this game, and then we'll go to, I'm pretty sure, the only 2 journalists in the country who covered this.
That's correct.
Well, I was watching this almost through the eyes of someone who'd never really seen much of the A-League before because my girlfriend who's in Canberra at the moment in COVID ISO, shout out to her, her TV was only working on 1 channel. So she was in a Channel 10 hostage situation and was forced to watch Macarthur 0, Melbourne City 1, which is exactly the sort of game that always happens when you try and introduce someone new to the A-League. You bring along a friend, 0-0 draw every time. You get someone to tune in. It's a game like this. This was garbage. Her comment was, there's like 5 people there and 10 cowbells, which summed it up pretty nicely. Melbourne
Dunking
City
on MacArthur's fan base. Are you sure you're not dating Nick Stoll?
Look, I will say, well done to all the Melbourne City fans who travelled there and sat in the away end because you paid more money than Villarreal fans will pay to watch them play in the Champions League against Bayern Munich. That's all I'll say on that. Guys, give us your thoughts.
My God, it was it was just waiting for something to write about until Matthew Leckie came on. And Leckie came on. He changed the game. Good 45 minutes from him, I thought, because they really needed something in that final third, not trying to, lash down on Rafael Borges Rodriguez, who I think's had quite a good week, considering he's actually gotten an opportunity and scored the winner at midweek. But Leckie gave him something different, linked up with Mclaren. Nice finish as well. But they also were quite lucky. I mean, Macarthur probably should have scored at least a couple times. Tom Glover made a good double save on Ulysses de Villa.
There was that disallowed goal.
Disallowed goal, as you mentioned. So, look, Macarthur would consider themselves unlucky not to get at least a point. It's 3 points gained for City. They're heading into like a horror run over the next little bit. I think they've got 12 games in the next just over 40 days between Champions League and A-League. So it's going to be a tight tussle for them, playing basically every 3 days after next week to see off the season and hopefully for their sake, get the Premiers played. So you know what? City got a clean sheet as well for the first time in a very long time as well. So that's a tick. But yeah, it was a really, really boring game, Joey.
Yeah, it sucked.
Great. Good point. That's what I like to hear. Raw 2, Western United 3.
This game. I'm going to head off, guys, because I did nothing else, so arrivederci.
All right, all good.
Yeah.
All right, we've lost another.
See you,
Josh, we started the show with 3. We expanded out to 6 at one stage, and now we're back to 3. Joey, any thoughts on the Raw?
We had
Western?
7 at one stage, didn't we? No. Yes.
No.
No, 6.
No.
No.
Ante wasn't here at the same time as Harrow.
There we go. What was the question?
Raw 2,
The question
Western
was
United
Raw
3.
2,
Tell us
Western 3.
what happened.
Any thoughts? Any thoughts? No,
It
don't
was-
tell us what happened. We don't need to know. Just some thoughts.
It was an interesting contest in the sense that this was one of the first times I can remember. I think it was the only time this season that Western United had more. They might have had more possession in one or two games. This was the first game this season I can remember them having significantly more of the ball than their opposition. The Raw came out content to sit back and make Western United beat them. And I thought that was super interesting to watch the dynamics occur, especially after Juan Lezcano got that early goal, which, as an aside, Aloisi keeps fobbing it off. Western continue to look really shaky underneath the press. I mean, we saw Sydney's third goal last week. Once again, you just press Jamie Young, you press the two centre-backs dropping deep to receive the ball from him. Western cannot play out.
This
And
is one of the few points that I had from this game was literally, why don't we see in the A-League more pressing of the goalkeepers? Because a lot of the goalkeepers have issues playing out with their feet. And I genuinely think there's probably 5 goals a season each team could get if they just constantly and intelligently press the keeper.
Well, I mean, if Western keep copping goals like that, they will absolutely experience it more. We even see, I don't think it led to quite the same sort of direct goals as it did against Sydney and Brisbane, but City and Victory also had a lot of joy in pressing Western's defence as they tried to play out from the back. So it really is something to look at. But once Brisbane got the goal and they went up, it was fascinating to watch how Western United went about it when it was still an 11-on-11 game before Jordan Holmes' red card in the 30th minute.
Speaking of red cards, very cool from Paramount to put that little graphic of the red card with the score and with the time of the red card.
They
Good
got
job,
the
Paramount.
time wrong. It happened
well-
at like 29 minutes 20, and they put it up as a 29th minute red card. No, whoever is working at Paramount, if it happens like at 29:20, it's the 30th minute red card.
Joey, it's 11:46 p.m. Man, come on, like, who cares about this thing? All right, I'm going to move us on because
Yeah,
Josh
this
is
podcast
about
is
to
in
I'm
die.
going to make a significant point here that leads on. No,
right.
I'm just kidding. Although it
This
is
podcast
indicative
is in
of
its
the lack of football people. No, I didn't
147th
finish my
minute. How's
Western
that for
United point.
accuracy?
I didn't finish my Western United point.
Go, quick.
I compared in the chat. They kind of played like South Melbourne here in NPL Victoria. High balls into the box, look for knockdowns, and see what you can do from there. Sort of like footy tactics in a way. Get it in high, knock it down for the crummers. And that was really interesting to see that despite the fact that Western United had about 70% of the ball until the red card, Brisbane were out shooting them 3-2. The red card completely changed the dynamic. Western United had 5 shots to 0 throughout the remainder of the first half. Brisbane Raw, they got the equaliser, had another one disallowed. Brisbane Raw had to adjust in the second half. They went from a back 5 to a back 4, another man in midfield. And to be honest, they were playing quite well. They were pushing Western really hard. But Western, they get the own goal through what has to be admitted was a good move. Get down the right. Lockie Wiles hammers it in. Lacroix catches the Raw napping to dink a ball in for Prijovic to make it 3-1 at that point. But at that point, Brisbane still came hard. Cyrus Demi, we're talking about kids coming on and making an impact. He sparked Raw into a comeback. And if there'd been another 10 minutes in there, that one, it would have been really interesting to see what played out. So whilst Raw lost this one, anybody playing Western United will certainly have been watching on with great interest. One would hope.
Mariners 3, Adelaide United 0. The only thing I'll say about this game is Urenya is an amazing player and should be an A-League All-Star if that thing even exists. Go, Joey.
I didn't watch the game, but I just have one thing to say.
Go.
Come down!
Excellent analysis. Knicks 2, Glory 1. Everyone loves the last minute winner.
That game?
What? Mariners Adelaide? Yeah, I saw bits of it. I saw enough of it. But we got to move on. Knicks 2, Glory 1. It was really cool. Obviously,
Shout out to our South Australian listeners.
All three of them.
They don't want to hear about it. Adelaide's garbage. They should never be as high in the table as they were, and I think we're seeing a course correction now. How's that for analysis?
Bang.
There we go. That's actual analysis. Now we can move on.
Knicks 2, Glory 1. Ufi Tale was not on the bench because I believe COVID. So Giancarlo Italiano was there, and he's a coach who's kind of really been, honing his craft for many years in the NPL New South Wales. And I was very pleased to see that, he got a bit of glory for that. Pennington, who scored the last minute goal, ran straight to him to celebrate. So, look, no one was in the crowd, but it was a special moment for those two. And I really liked that. Anyone have anything to add to that?
Clayton Lewis's injury. That sucks. He's a player I really like watching, and he has a really nice left foot. Possible dislocation or a fracture of his ankle. I don't know if we've got any update on the injury so far, but fingers crossed for him that it's not as bad as it looked.
All right. And then just before we go, AFL v football. It was a rough week for our sport. We got to admit it. But AFL, they put their head so far up their ass this week, and they got all, where else in the world would you have celebrations like this, buddy? Every single country in the world, you would have celebrations like this, except possibly North Korea. That was the only one that I thought maybe that wouldn't happen. Although maybe if Kim Jong-un hit another hole in one or something.
No other fan bases on the planet can compare to North Korea's synchronicity in their chanting and their dancing and all of that stuff. So who's the real winners here?
That's exactly right. And I will also say that there was, the Nick Davis saying, it'd be easier for an AFL player to become an A-League player than, bro, your sport, 23-year-olds who've never played the game become professional. Get out of here. Yep, go, Joey.
My short analysis for that, and I can say because it's nearly midnight, get fucked.
And
absolutely no way.
Finally, just a little bit of look, with all the respect to AFL, which is a sport that I
let me
admire on some level.
Yeah, humans grow up using their hands. It is humanity's default position is to use their hands to do things. You pelt a bottle at somebody. What do? They use their hands to block it. You throw something to somebody. Their default instinct isn't to kill it with a beautiful touch and then flick it on to Messi's on running, darting behind the defense. It's to catch the flippin' thing. Why am I saying flippin'? I just said get fucked earlier. Humanity's default state is to use the hands, not the feet. The entire thing that makes football is that we look at that and say, you know what, screw that noise. Let's make this shit harder. I can't believe this is a debate.
I'll just say their sport's been around, and it's a sport I like. I've been to games. I've even played it myself. 125 years, and it is popular in 3 states in a sparsely populated country. And we are the biggest pop culture phenomenon that's ever existed in history. Go.
I don't give a fuck about that. Two points. One, I joined a junior footy club when I was 15 years old. I got pestered into it by a mate from basketball. I didn't go to a single training session, barely paid attention, played in the ruck, couldn't kick to save my life, came 3rd in the BNF, and we made the grand final.
Well,
the second point is the one time when they do kick the ball. Have you noticed in the AFL, their set shots, their set kicks? Half these bastards can't even kick straight. So the one time they actually do need to use their feet, they fuck it up.
And maybe that sounds like an anti-footy comment, but it's from the heart.
It's true. None of these guys can just take a set shot on goal. It's ridiculous.
Great reference from Josh there. I think we should end it. Stephen Gunavas says, where's Ante when you need him? Ante's gone to bed, and we need to go to bed too. Thank you so much.
I need to go home.
Yes, you need to go home.
Shout out to anyone who's listened to this whole thing, by the way.
We've still got 16 viewers on.
Shout out to you! Shout out to you guys. That's amazing.
Look,
I wasn't listening to the whole thing, and I was on it.
I'll just say, if you want the podcast shorter, please let us know. But when I've tried to curtail it,
we will put this out as a 2-parter.
I don't know if we will. I don't know if we can be bold.
Nah, fuck it. Fuck that. They can cop the 2.5 hours, mate.
Look, Rogan does it. Bill Simmons
skip.
does it. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, there's time codes on there. But thank you so much for listening.
Do we have to call this episode? Don't worry, there are time codes in the description.
That's not bad, actually. Yeah. Shout out to you, Josh. Shout out to Ante. Shout out to Pokuah. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Nick Tabano and Joey. You were third in the best and fairest all the way in AFL, and right now you're third amongst us. So congratulations. Nah, you're the best. Joey's the best. Look, Joey is genuine. It's 11:53, and
Joey, go home. Go home. They're gonna lock you inside Amy Park.
Joey's Jack Pentelios listening in bed. Love it, lads. Shout out to all the people listening. We actually love the fact that you guys listen. I really appreciate it. And
I have to go home and write. I don't even go to bed. I have to go home and write something else.
Jesus, someone employ this guy full time. I'm ending the broadcast now. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great night.